What is up, YouTube? Dottz Gaming here, and today I'm proud to bring you guys the update for my complete beginner guide to the Elder Scrolls Online for the Summerset patch. I like to make this guide every year for ESO as a way to give the community, all the new players coming into the game, one solid resource to learn all of the basics for the Elder Scrolls Online. The game is very deep and has a lot of elements to it, and as a new player, when you're just thrown into the world, you can feel a little lost and like there's just so much to do and there's so many elements and you don't know where to start. Well, that is what this guide is for. I know the video is long, but it is timestamped so that you can go to the specific sections and watch specifically the information that you need. Or if you're downloading the game and you want to learn all the basics before heading into Tamriel, you're free to sit down and watch the complete guide from beginning to end. But I want this to be a resource for you guys for while you're going throughout your adventures in Tamriel. If you encounter something and you don't know what it is, you can come here, watch the piece of this video that you need, and keep going about your day. As you can see, this video, these are the timestamps for the video. They will be in the description below as well as in the pinned comments. And this pretty much covers every topic you could possibly need to know as a beginner for the Elder Scrolls Online. If you want to go more in depth with some of the topics, I do have other guides on my website, dottsgaming.com, as well as my YouTube channel. Most of the topics I'm going to touch on fully here in this video, but others that are way more in depth, I'm going to just basically give you guys the basics that you need to know, and then you're free to go explore my channel and my website for further information on those topics. But enough of me blabbering on about the intro, guys. Let's get right into the new Elder Scrolls Online Complete Beginner Guide for the Summerset Isles patch. The Elder Scrolls Online runs off a buy-to-play model, so basically you just purchase the game and you own it, no strings attached. You can have an ESO Plus membership, but I'm going to cover that in the next section, but this is not a subscription-based game. It is just you buy it, you own it, and you have the full game. Now, there's a couple different editions now with Summerset. I am recording this pre-Summerset, so you're going to see some of the pre-order benefits here, but they did change the ordering process a bit with Summerset. And I do think it is much more straightforward now. So they have the Summerset edition, which is going to include the ESO base game. So that is just Elder Scrolls Online, the original content. It's also going to include the Summerset chapter, and that is it for the Summerset edition. You could also get the Collector's Edition, so the ESO collection. That will include the base game of the Elder Scrolls Online. You could get the Summerset chapter, the previous chapter, which was Morrowind, and then you're also going to get all of the bonus DLC contents, Imperial City, Orsinium, Thieves Guild, and Dark Brotherhood. Chapters are basically the jargon for expansion, while DLCs are kind of like smaller patches that come out that offer smaller bits of content. So that is the difference between a DLC and a chapter, just so you don't get confused with that wording. And then you also have, at least at the time of recording this, the Morrowind edition, which includes the Morrowind chapter and the ESO base game. Now, if you do get ESO Plus, which I'm going to talk about in the next section, you do get all of the DLCs, which will include Morrowind in Summerset. The ESO Plus should, I believe, include Morrowind in Summerset. And it will also include all these DLC packs. So basically, you could just buy the Summerset edition, have ESO Plus, and having ESO Plus, which is the subscription for bonuses, will give you access to the DLCs and Morrowind, I believe, without having to actually purchase them. It does come part of your subscription. So if you do plan on subscribing, you could always get this version. But do keep in mind, if you do unsubscribe from the game, you're going to lose access to those areas, and you would need to purchase them with crowns in the crown store, which is the in-game currency in the in-game shop, in order to regain access to those. So it's just something to keep in mind when you are purchasing it. The game also runs off of mega servers, so it's one big server for PC NA, PS4 NA, Xbox One NA, and then all of those for the EU versions. Now, your account does not transfer over. If you have a PC account in the PC game, you have it on PC and not on Xbox. Just keep that in mind. There's no cross-platform play, and your purchase for PC does not now give you purchase for Xbox. The next thing that we are going to cover is the Crown Store and an ESO Plus membership. So the Crown Store is simply Elder Scrolls Online's in-game store, and crowns is the currency that you have to purchase with real money for the in-game store. Now, this is not a pay-to-win game. I really do enjoy ESO's buy-to-play model. The in-game currency mostly is used for convenience things such as mounts, mount training, visual stuff such as costumes that your character can wear to change how they look, dyes to turn your character different colors. You could buy in-game houses, stuff like that. It's all non-game breaking stuff. It's not like if you spend, $1,000 on crowns, you're not going to be better than someone who spent $0 on crowns. That's not how ESO works, and do not go into this thinking that it is a pay-to-win game. And I really do enjoy that system. Now, you also have a ESO Plus membership. ESO Plus membership has its own host of bonuses and offers all of its own things, and these include DLC quest starters that are available in the story section of the collections window. I did touch on that in the last section, that ESO Plus gives you access to the DLCs without you actually purchasing them. You do get crowns every time your subscription renews. So when you do purchase a subscription, you're not only getting all of these bonuses, but you're getting the corresponding amount of crowns, the amount of money you spent, whether it's 1 month recurring, 3 month recurring, or 6 month recurring. You also get access to the wonderful craft bag that is accessible via your character's inventory. The craft bag is basically an infinite container that holds crafting supplies. It makes inventory management a lot easier and is always one of the big reasons that I do think ESO Plus is worth it, because it makes inventory management 1,000,000 times easier. So it's definitely something to consider. You also get access to costume dyeing. I know you probably don't know what dyeing is, but basically costumes can override your character's appearance, and dyeing allows you to change the colors of different things in game. As at a base level, you can only change your armor colors, but with ESO Plus, you could also dye these costumes, which are preset outfits that your character can put on. You can dye those different colors as well. You also get double the amount of allowable furnishings and collectibles that you can put in your player house. You get double bank space because every account has its own bank that any character on their account can access. So you will get double the amount of bank space, and you'll also get double the amount of transmute crystal capacity. I'm going to go over transmute crystals, traits, and all that stuff later on, but you get to hold double. And then you also get 10% bonuses on experience, which is what your character uses to level up. Crafting inspiration, which is the fancy way of saying experience for crafting. Trait research, I will go over that in the crafting section, and gold acquisition. So again, as you can see, a lot of this is convenience, not really game breaking, not going to make you stronger or weaker than another player. I probably played ESO for about 6 months without ESO Plus, so it can be done, but it definitely does make things a lot easier, especially for the craft bag. But just something to consider when deciding whether or not you want to purchase it. Next, we're going to go over the factions and races. ESO has 3 different factions in the game with 3 corresponding races on each faction. You have the Daggerfall Covenant that has the Breton race, the Orc race, and the Redguard race all on the faction. For the Aldmeri Dominion, we have High Elves, Wood Elves, and the Khajiit. And then for the Ebonheart Pact, we have the Argonian, the Dark Elf, and the Nord. The neutral race that you see down here is the Imperial. The Imperial can play on any faction that they want, but you do need to buy the Imperial race through the Crown Store in order to gain access to them. They're not like this groundbreakingly amazing race, so don't think that this is like a pay-to-win race. They're good, but it's not like they're groundbreakingly OP. They're actually not like #1 in any category, to be honest. But as you can see, if you're noticing, like I'm choosing Breton and I can choose whichever faction I want. You could also buy from the Crown Store the Any Race, Any Alliance upgrade, which I definitely recommend to people because it adds a lot of flexibility. You can basically play whatever race you want on any alliance that you want. Now, The only time alliance matters in the Elder Scrolls Online is in Cyrodiil open world player versus player. That is the game's open world PvP, and that's the only time your faction matters, because you're locked into playing with your faction in that instance and in that area. Otherwise, you can quest with people on different factions, you can group with people on different factions, do dungeons, trials, you can do anything with anyone, and the only time it matters is Cyrodiil PvP. Like I said, I just like to have the any race, any alliance, because I do feel it offers a lot of flexibility to me, but again, that's really up to you to decide. Now, in terms of the races, I'm going to go over the races and what I think they're good at, just because players always, when they're starting the game, they want to know what race is best for what. Now, Bretons, High Elves, and Dark Elves are really great for magic-based damage dealers, okay? If you're planning on using a lot of fire, the Dark Elf would be best, and then if you do not, the High Elf would be best, but Breton is still also a great choice. If you plan on dealing your damage as like a physical damage dealer, aka you're going to be using something called stamina, but just to stick with me with physical, you're going to want to be using either the Redguard, the Khajiit, or the Wood Elf. For those are your best options. And if you're going Dottz, I want to play on the Ebonheart Pact, then I probably would recommend the Nord. The Nord is going to be your choice for stamina DPS if you're locked into the Ebonheart Pact. And then in terms of tanks, the best tanks that we have access to are Argonians. We also have Nords, we have Imperials, and then Orcs are also not a bad choice. And then for healers, we have the number 1 being the Argonian, number 2 being Breton, and then again, if you want to play on the Dominion and don't have access to any race, any alliance, I would personally recommend High Elf as your healer option. Now, again, these are just like what the races that are quote-unquote the best at their roles. You could very well, if you want, play a Wood Elf Magicka character. These racial bonuses are helpful, don't get me wrong, but I'm always of the opinion that you should be playing what you want and playing what you're going to like and enjoy and what visually appeals to you. So, you know, you can take these recommendations that I made and run with it, or you can just go on your own way and make a Wood Elf Magicka damage dealer. It is really up to you. Next up, we have the classes in the Elder Scrolls Online. What classes does this game have? We have 5 overarching class types. Now, the thing with ESO is that ESO is not like other MMORPGs where certain classes are funneled into certain roles. ESO is not that way. Any class can be any role. For example, you can be a Dragon Knight healer. You can be a sorcerer physical damage dealer. You can be a Nightblade healer. You know, and everyone's going to look at Nightblade and go, well, that's supposed to be, you know, relying on stealth blades and speed. That's going to be a rogue. No, you can be a Nightblade healer if you want to. All these classes can fit into any role and do anything. It's just the way that they do it is slightly different. And it's one of the great things I love about ESO is that it gives you a lot of customization to play whatever you want. It's just a matter of how the classes go about doing it. But starting with the Dragon Knight. The Dragon Knight is exactly what it sounds like. It's a Dragon Knight. Focuses on flames, fire, chains. As you play like a physical damage dealing version, you're going to use a lot of poison, claws, disease. This is the class that I play the most. I love it. It's a lot of fun. And if you like if you like dragons and dragon-based things, this is going to be the class for you. But let's say you're not like me and you don't like fire and dragons and you instead are a fan of lightning, the Sorcerer is going to be for you. The Sorcerer kind of plays stereotypically mage-like when you play as a magic-using Sorc. They play very stereotypically mage-like as for other games. They could also have pets that they keep with them at all times that will deal damage alongside of them. But if you decide to play a physical damage-dealing sorcerer, that sorcerer is going to rely on lightning for speed and utilize lightning for those purposes in order to deal physical damage. You can also, again, be a Sorc tank, Sorc healer, the class can do anything, but it's very lightning focused, so you gotta like lightning to play a Sorc. We also have the Nightblade. Everyone's gonna know the Nightblade is your stereotypical stealth class, using a lot of daggers. Now, it doesn't just do stealth though. It can also deal with dark magic and siphoning blood magic, and that's where you're going to see the Magic Nightblade come from. Magic Nightblades use a lot of siphoning-based abilities based on stealing health from your opponent and stealing your opponent's life essence. Tanks are going to deal a lot with using the shadows for their benefit, while, of course, your stereotypical physical damage dealing Nightblades, your assassins, are going to use the assassination abilities and use those types of skills to augment their kit. So this is, again, if you want to play either something that involves stealing life from your enemies, a stereotypical rogue, or using, let's say, the shadows to tank, Nightblade's going to be for you. The next class we have up is the Templar. The Templar is going to be your stereotypical paladin or priest. Again, they can fit into any of the roles that all the other classes can. And they're just, again, very light-focused, very light-based, very priest or paladin-esque. So if that's the type of theme that you like, Templar is going to be for you. Some of the best healers in the game, if you want to play a healer, I definitely would recommend Templar. Definitely a really, really solid healer choice. Dragon Knight is a very, very solid choice for tank. Again, all the classes can tank, but Dragon Knight tanks are just really, really good. They're a little bit a step above. Templars, while all classes can heal, Templars have that step above in the healing department. So if you really want a really solid, good endgame healer, I gotta recommend Templar. Again, all the other classes can heal as well, but I think the Templar does it just a tiny bit better. And then, of course, we have the Warden. The Wardens are our defenders of nature. They can use a lot of animal companions to their benefit, and they're pretty solid at every role. They do everything pretty well. They're not a master in any department, I don't think, but they can do everything pretty well. They're pretty good tanks, pretty good healers, and as damage dealers, they can push out a lot of burst pressure. So if that is what you like, and if you like a nature theme with plants and frost and pets and animal companions, then the Warden is going to be for you. So now that we covered the races, the classes, etc., let's go into the actual character creation. What can you expect from character creation? So as you see, you can kind of preview with your character with novice gear, champion gear, or no gear, and then you can go from there into choose your class. Like I said, we're going to, of course, choose Dragon Knight because that's what I play. And then after that, the customization of this game is pretty deep. You can go into the body type and choose, do you want muscular, thin, large, or something in between. You can adjust your character's height, skin color. You can give body markings such as tattoos or scars. You can choose all of these different things about your upper body, your lower body, and then you can get into your face, adjust whether or not want a soft face, a heroic face, or an angular face, or somewhere in the middle. You could also test and listen to the different voices and choose a voice type. Change your hair, of course. You could also change your hair color, shocker, shocker. And then, again, all of these different features such as age, whether or not you want earrings and stuff, different head markings such as scars or face paint. Then, of course, you have all the face-changing sliders. You could adjust chin, jaw, cheekbone, etc. Eye color, different stuff about the eyes, brows, nose, mouth, and ears. You can really get pretty in-depth with your character creation here and really customize your character to be unique for you. And then after that, simply choose a name and you can head on in. Once you create your new character in Summerset, you will go through the tutorial, and after the tutorial, you will be spit out in this room with Oriandra. I'm not going to show you guys the tutorial. I don't want to spoil it for people who want to experience it for themselves the first time, but this is the area that you get spat out in when you are done. Once the tutorial is over, you are pretty much free to go wherever you want. You're going to be right here in Summerset once you are done. And this guy will approach to give you your first quest. Now, people always ask, though, Dottz Gaming. I don't know where to go next. What do I do? After, you know, maybe I do these quests and I'm doing Summerset, but I want to go to the main part of Tamriel and I want to see what else there is to offer, maybe for my faction, maybe the main quest from the old game. What am I supposed to do? So basically what you need to do is you need to go to your map, right click, and you're going to see you actually have some wayshrines learned on your map. I'm going to cover wayshrines later in the complete beginner guide, but for now, just let you guys know that they're basically places that you can teleport to for gold, or you can use wayshrines to go place to place, and it basically will allow you to teleport there. Now, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to teleport to a town. So let me just, for argument's sake right now, teleport to Volkelgard. Volkelgard is a town for the Aldmeri Dominion. What's going to happen is that once you get to the wayshrine, a hooded figure is going to approach you, saying that they have a message for you and that they need your help with something, and then they're going to offer you a quest. That hooded figure is the person who's going to allow you to get into the main quest of overall ESO, which is fighting Molag Bal. So as you can see, after teleporting to the wayshrine, you get the quest Soul Shriven in Cold Harbor in your quest journal underneath main quest, and it tells you to talk to the hooded figure, which is right here, right near the wayshrine, so you could talk to her and start the main quest. Now, if you want to start the quest for your faction's quest line, every faction has their own quest line that has to deal with all the factions' dealings and their holds within Tamriel, and you could just follow that storyline for your individual faction. If you want to start those quests, you have to go to some specific places. For the Aldmeri Dominion, you have to start it at Carnarthi's Roost. For the Daggerfall Covenant, you have to start at Stros Mackay, and for the Ebonheart Pact, you have to start at Bleak Rock. And then if you have Morrowind and want to start the Morrowind questline, you can go to Seyda-Neen Wayshrine, and that will allow you to start the various quest lines for the three factions and then the actual Morrowind questline. So that is how you get back to mainland Tamriel, start the main quest, and do your faction quests after doing the Summerset tutorial, if you want, when you eventually decide you want to leave Summerset and explore Tamriel a little bit more. The next thing I'm going to cover is the user interface. Now, my user interface has changed a little bit by some add-ons that I have because I'm on PC, and I will be covering what add-ons are in the next section. So this isn't entirely what the base game is going to look like for you guys, but this is what my game looks like, so I'll just show you the basic user interface that you guys will have access to here on my screen. Now, as you can see, we have our magic bar here on the bottom left, which shows you our magic level. So basically, the magic is what determines how big of a resource pool we have to cast spells. We also have our health bar, again, which shows our HP. And then we have our stamina bar, which shows our resource for running, dodge rolling, using stamina spells, like physical spells and whatnot, etc. We also have our active quest up here. You could cycle through it. My keybind is T, but you could cycle through your active quests up here, and it will put an arrow on your compass, which you can see right here, and the compass will show you what direction you're facing, where your quest is, etc. These buffs down here from an add-on I have. This is from an add-on. And then the chat window is down here behind this little overlay I have, but then your chat is over here. And that is kind of like the basic screen that you have when you're playing. Now, I'm going to get asked this 100 times because you guys are going to get into game, and this stuff down here is not going to be shown to start. This is also your ability bar, by the way. This has 5 abilities on it, an ultimate ability, and a consumable slot, or a quick slot. But I'm going to cover that later in the guide. I know you guys are probably looking at this like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to cover this stuff later in the guide. But you have an ability bar, a quick slot bar that you can, choose different items that you kind of want to have access to and switch between those. But that is your quick slot bar. But to make sure that you're able to see this stuff at all times, simply go into settings, combat, and then ability bar and attribute bar. You want always show. Resource bar, you want number and percent, and then ultimate number, you want to turn that on. I have it off because it's being handled by an add-on, but I would recommend turning it on if you do not have add-ons. Now, that is the base ability, the base screen. In terms of the different menus, we have the crown store we covered. We have crown crates, which are basically, it's a loot crate system that gives you different rewards. The odds on it are not that great. I really don't recommend it. In terms of other stuff, we have our gear windows, which have all of our different gear pieces here. We have some stats over here on the side. We have jewelry here, our different weapons. We could have 2 different weapon bars in ESO. I will cover that more later on in the guide. And then over here we have our bags, which shows all the items that we have in our bag. Our gold. This is my craft bag, so you can see I have a lot of stuff here as small as the slider bar is. We have our different currencies, and then again, we have our quick slots. We also have our character sheet, which shows our name, race, class, equipment, title, outfit, our attributes, different stats about our horse. I will cover that later. And then any active effects we have on our character. We also have the skills pane, which shows us the different skills we can unlock or the different passive abilities that you will unlock. And then there's also going to be a skill advisor here. You could follow this if you want some help from ESO on kind of following a skill path throughout your leveling adventures, but I would personally recommend checking out the leveling guides on my website, dottsgaming.com, and following those leveling builds while you're leveling through your adventures. You also have the champion point menu, which is the leveling system beyond level 50, which is the max level in ESO, and the champion point system is the leveling system, like I said, beyond that, and this menu will only be unlocked once you are past level 50, so while you're below level 50, you will not even be able to see this. We also then have our achievements menu. This is our journal. This has our quests in it, our lore library. So this basically has all the books we've collected, any achievements that we have, and then leaderboards for PvP, trials, solo instances, and battlegrounds, which is another PvP mode. We also have collections, which shows us all the different upgrades we have, different hats, costumes, furnishings we've collected, any assistance that we've got from the crown store, mounts, pets, emotes, etc. And this collections menu will show all of that. We also have stories. Now, in the stories menu is where, let's say you've purchased a DLC, you're able to get the quests from here. You're able to come into this menu, into the stories menu, and get those quests in order to start those DLCs. We also then have housing, which shows you that your houses that you've collected, and then you're able to travel to them, as well as houses that you've not collected. And then you also have your outfit styles, where you can kind of look at all the different outfit styles you have collected and kind of preview stuff and see, what you like, what will look good on your character, etc. You also then have the map, which brings up the map here, and you can see all the different stuff. We have the quests that are shown here. This is like a key if you want to look at that. Filters, different locations that you could just select and scroll through. And then the different houses based on their zones, whether or not they're collected or not collected. And then also right-clicking the map will zoom you right on out. We then have the group pane. So this will show you anybody in your group, and you can select your role, whether you're a tank, a healer, or a damage dealer. You can queue for dungeons in this menu. You can also... nobody really uses this. This is like an alliance war queue. I don't ever use this. I don't know if anybody does. And then you also have the battleground queue. This will look a little bit different come Summerset. There'll be more options here, but as of right now, this is what it looks like. But you could also queue for battlegrounds. You then have your friends list and your ignore list. You have your guilds. You can be in up to 5 guilds at once, but this is where your guilds are going to be. Home, roster, ranks, heraldry. This is unlocked because I'm a guild master. And then the history. But this will be your guild menu, and you can go here and see other people in your guild. The Alliance War. This is the menu to queue for player versus player. This also shows you the status of your current campaign, as well as your Alliance rank. You then have your mail. This has all of the different, mail in here. You could also send mail from this. You have notifications, which will notify you if you've been invited to a guild, if you have a friend request, etc. This is the help menu that shows you some player basics. You can talk to customer support, and then it shows you what emotes you have access to. And then this is from an add-on that I have, so that is why this is up here. But that is just the basic UI and what you can expect when you are running throughout your adventures here in ESO. The next part of the guide that I am going to cover is add-ons. So what add-ons are is they're basically they're add-ons to the main game that change the way your game looks, change some of the functionality, add some functionality, and just overall change your game's interface to make it look a different way or act a different way. Now, this is a PC-specific thing, so I'm sorry if you're on console, you will not have access to add-ons. But for PC, you do. Now, the best way that I have found to install add-ons is to use a program called Minion from minion.gg. I would recommend picking it up. It is an add-on manager for the Elder Scrolls Online that I find much easier to use than installing them yourselves manually. Whenever you log into Minion every day, you can see what add-ons are up to date. You can search and install add-ons, update them. It's just a really convenient thing that I recommend downloading if you're going to use add-ons. It's what most people use for ESO. Now, inevitably, I'm going to get asked 100 times, Dottz, what add-ons do you use when you play ESO? What add-ons do you think are necessary? I'm just going to go over the add-ons that I use, and you guys can decide for yourselves if you would like to use these for yourself. I'm not going to go over the configurations. I'm going to cover that in another guide, but I'm going to just tell you, at the very least, which ones I use. So the first add-on is Action Duration Reminder. Action Duration Reminder basically, on my skills, puts a duration for how long is left on the skills, and it shows when I switch the bars. You know, I can see on my back bar how long is still left on those skills, and then again when I switch, it shows how long is still left on that skill of my front bar. I very much enjoy this for keeping track of my buffs and knowing how long is left on every duration. Add-on Selector basically allows me to make add-on packs that I can just click and load, and it basically allows me to activate and deactivate add-ons with a single click. I have Advanced Member Tooltip. This is a guild management add-on. It just shows me how long people have been in my guild and how much money they've deposited into the bank. Awesome Guild Store changes the interface of the guild stores to be a little bit more robust, in my opinion. It does have its quirks and it's a little buggy at times, but overall I find that what it gives is worth it compared to some of like the minor drawbacks that it has. But if you find out that some of the searching bugs are annoying to you, you can get rid of it. But I like it because it makes the sorting in the guild store much more robust. We have Champion Point Respec. Champion Point Respec basically allows me to save champion point presets, and I can save and load them with just a single click of a button. So it makes changing between my PvE and PvP champion point setups much easier. We also have Combat Metrics, which is just simply a DPS counter, and when you open up Combat Metrics, it shows you all of the different information about your damage, how much abilities did how much damage, how much healing did what, and it allows you to really inspect your damage a lot and see where your sources are coming from. You also have Constellations, which allows you to optimize your DPS by combining well with Combat Metrics. It basically optimizes your champion points to help make your damage as good as it can be. I have an entire guide covering that, so you can go on my channel and search the How to Optimize Your DPS guide if this is something you're interested in. I also have Dark UI. Dark UI is basically what kind of gives my user interface this little bit of a night mode appearance to it. It is by far my favorite add-on. Definitely recommend downloading it. We have Destinations, which puts various places of interest on your map that would not be otherwise there. And it's very customizable. You can make this show as much or as little as you want. And in my opinion, it's a staple add-on for playing on PC. You also have Dressing Room. Dressing Room allows you to switch between different configurations of gear and ability bars very easily. So as you can see, I have 4 different gear and ability setups saved, so I can switch between them with just a simple click of a button. We also have Foundry Tactical Combat. Foundry Tactical Combat is what I use for my buffs at the bottom right. That's basically the main thing that I use it for. I don't really use it for a whole lot else. It's just mainly the buffs at the bottom right to keep track of those. We also have Godsend, which allows me to send mass mail to my guild. I have Kill Counter, which is a kill counter add-on for when I play PvP. These just come baked in with other add-ons. You don't need to do anything with them. Lorebooks puts lorebook icons on your map for the Mages Guild. It's something that you have to collect. I've collected so many that they're not even popping up. Here they are. So you can, it shows you where the lore books are that you need to collect for the Mages Guild. The Mages Guild is a guild that you can join, and collecting these levels up that guild. I will cover that more later in the guide, but this is a very important add-on for basic, especially for if you play a magic-based character, you're going to want to grab this add-on because you're going to need to level up your Mages Guild skill line. Again, we'll cover that later in the guide. We also have Master Merchant. Master Merchant basically shows me the price of various items and how much it's worth with data. As you can see, it's, you know, it says that the Master Merchant price for this Bloodthorn necklace is 4.6k gold, and it shows data points for how much it was sold for, and etc., etc. Collects it over time. A big add-on, though, so I would definitely disable this during PvP, but for general play, I have it enabled. I have Potion Maker. It's just an add-on to help me with my alchemy. I could search different effects and know what things I need to combine to make different potions. Raid Notifier basically notifies me of certain things as they're happening within trials. Very, very helpful add-on if you plan on raiding endgame. I definitely recommend this. Research Assistant helps me keep track of research for crafting. I know you probably don't know what that is yet unless you've gone and looked at the crafting section, but this is a very important add-on. This is something similar to this is in the base game. You can keep track of your things that you have researched in the base game, but if you have multiple characters that you plan on playing, you're going to need an add-on like this, so I would definitely recommend getting Research Assistant. I'm not going to cover Sank's Ultimate Organizer because that is a little bit more of an advanced add-on for what something a beginner would be using. We have Skyshards, which basically puts pictures of Skyshards on your map. I will again be covering what Skyshards are later in the guide, but it shows you the different locations of Skyshards on your map so that you're able to know where you need to go to collect them. We also have Votan's Keybinder. It basically keeps my keybinds the same between all of my characters. Otherwise, you are going to have to change them every single time you make a new character. And then we have Votan's minimap, which basically puts that minimap on the right side of my screen. And that is it for my add-ons. That's currently what I'm using, and as long as none of these add-ons completely break during Summerset, when Summerset is released, these are going to be the ones that I continue to use when Summerset comes out. The next thing I'm going to cover is attributes and the difference between different types of builds in the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, you have three main attributes in ESO: Magicka, Health, and Stamina. Health is obviously your health bar. It determines how much damage you can take, and when your health reaches 0, you will die. You also have Magicka, which is a resource that you have to spend on certain skills, and you also have Stamina, which is a resource that you have to spend on certain skills and a resource that you use on certain other actions in games, such as sprinting, sneaking, interrupting enemies with bash, or breaking yourself free from CC using break free. That stuff costs stamina. That is basically the simple way to describe these three attributes. Now, what's the difference between the different types of builds? Now, a healer build and a magic damage dealing build are going to put all their points into Magicka. Stamina damage dealer builds want to put all their points into stamina, while tanks want to generally spread their resource points, their attribute points, over all three resources. Now you're probably wondering, why, if I'm a Magicka damage dealer, why would I want to put all my points into Magicka? What benefit do I get out of putting all my points here? Well, besides the fact that your resource pool is going to be greatly enhanced by the fact that all your points are placed here, abilities deal more damage based on the resource that they cost. So Force Pulse, costing 2,484 Magicka, will get stronger the bigger my Magicka pool is. But if let's say I was using a skill like Rearming Trap, cost stamina, Rearming Trap would get stronger based on the size of my stamina pool, which is why as a damage dealer, you primarily want to be putting all your points into the resource that your main damage dealing abilities cost. As a healer, you also want to put all your points into Magicka because your heals will be scaling. If you use heals that cost Magicka, which as a healer you do because you're going to use your restoration staff, and as you can see, the skills here cost Magicka, you're going to want to put all of your points into Magicka because, again, your the amount of healing that your abilities do is going to get stronger because, again, cost Magicka, and things get stronger and do more healing based on the resource, the size of your max pool of the resource that the ability uses. Now, you might be wondering, well, Dottz, is there ever a situation where as a stamina character, I might want to use a magicka ability, or as a magicka character, I might want to use a stamina ability? And there actually is. There are situations in which you might want to do that. Now, for example, I, on my Dragon Knight, at least prior to Summerset, use rearming trap on my character even though it costs stamina. The reason I do that is because it gives me a very important buff. I don't care about the damage that this deals. I care about the buff that I get from it, which is called minor force, and it increases my critical damage done by 10%. It's an extremely good buff for PvE content, like endgame PvE content, like when you do dungeons or raids. It's very, very good. And prior to Summerset, there was no magic costing source of this buff. So I needed to get it from a stamina ability. But I'm using this ability for its utility and the buff it grants, not for the damage it deals. So as a stamina character, like let's say you're playing a Nightblade, you're going to notice that your character has stealth. Stealth costs magicka. You're using, even though it costs magicka, it's an ability that you're still going to want to use because of the utility it provides. So that is a situation where you would want to use another skill. You would want to use a stamina costing skill as a magicka character for its utility, and, you know, a magicka costing skill if you're a stamina character for its utility, not for its damage. Your main damaging abilities you want to have cost the resource that is your biggest pool. So in this case, all my magicka, so my main damage dealing skills cost magicka. Now, in terms of, and I already kind of went over healers, about how healers, it's the same concept. Your heals also scale the same way that damage dealing abilities scale. But then we have tanks. Tanks are going to want to invest their points into all three attributes. I like to say that when you're leveling, do like a pretty much an equal spread, maybe dip a little bit more into health than the other two, but you kind of want to go almost equal while you're leveling. And that's because when you reach the end game, the amount of points you put into magicka, health, and stamina is going to vary based on the gear that you wear, because tanks need to hit certain break points for their magic, health, and stamina. And you're going to want to put points into those things to make sure that you reach those breakpoints. Now, I know this is a little premature, but just so you know what those are, come endgame, you're looking for about 17,500 to 20,000 magicka, at least 30 to 35,000 health, and then at least 24k stamina, or I believe the usual breakpoints. Now, again, you'll only reach these stats once you are CP 300 and above. I will go over what CP 300 means and why that's so important later, but I just wanted to include this right now just so you guys would understand why you'd want to spread your points out. It's, again, though, you like those breakpoints as a tank because it allows you to not only cast your skills, but stay alive and block properly, being that block costs stamina. The next thing I'm going to cover is damage scaling, mitigation, and status effects. Now, I kind of touched on damage scaling in the last section as it pertains to your various builds and your attributes. So if you did not watch the last section, I would recommend going back and watching it. But as you know from last section, your magic damage dealing and healing skills scale with magic, the amount of magicka pool that you have, and your stamina damage dealing skills and your stamina heals get stronger based on the size of your stamina pool. But you might be wondering, are there other things that impact how much damage or healing other things do? And there are. Your spell damage and your weapon damage are two very important numbers. If you're a magic dealing character and your abilities cost magicka, they are going to be further amplified by spell damage. Spell damage is also going to add into how much damage or healing your magicka-based abilities and weapons cause. Now, you could also want some spell critical. It gives your magicka-based abilities and weapons a chance to deal critical damage, which allows them to hit even harder. And the higher this chance, the higher the probability that your spells will deal critical damage. So basically, your skills just hit harder. And then the same thing on the stamina side. We have Weapon damage affects how much damage or healing your stamina-based abilities and weapons cause. And then same thing with weapon critical. Gives your physical attacks a chance to deal critical damage. So it would have, even though my character's a magic character, as we see, I have a 23.4% chance for my physical attacks to deal that extra bit of damage. Now, this is mitigated by resistance. Now we have spell resistance, decreases the amount of damage I take from magic-based attacks, so it counteracts everybody else's magicka, spell damage, and spell critical. Then we have physical resistance, decreases the amount of damage I take from physical attacks, which again reduces the amount of damage I take from other people's stamina, weapon damage, weapon critical, etc. And then we also have critical resistance, decreases the damage you take when you are the victim of a critical strike, which goes and reduces the amount of damage taken from people's critical hits. So it kind of, stacks a little bit here with physical and spell resistance. Now, this is not needed for player versus environment content. If you're just questing and you're never fighting another player, you do not need the stat because monsters in the world cannot deal critical damage. If you are PvPing, this is extremely important and you need this skill or you will die very, very quickly. My personal recommendation is to have at least 2,000 critical resistance when you're PvPing at an end game point. Or if you're in like a no champion point environment, try to have maybe like at least 1,000 to 1,500 minimum. But have some critical resistance when you're PvPing. Otherwise, you are going to be taking a lot of damage. So definitely make sure you have some critical resistance. But then we also have other damage sources. So I know now that we know what these are, there's other damage types that fall into the overarching categories. We have, as you can see from Force Pulse, we have Flame, Frost, and Shock damage. Flame, Frost, and Shock damage fall under the overarching category of magicka. So these damage types will get stronger based on how much magicka and spell damage you have. And then there's also a fourth category called magic damage. A lot of new players I see screw this up. Magic damage is different than flame damage. Don't confuse those two. Like, Flame, Frost, and Shock are not considered a magic damage. They're like magicka damage, if you will. Magic damage in Elder Scrolls is its own category. But all four of these are affected by how much spell damage you have and how big your magicka pool is. On the flip side, for stamina, they also have 4 different types of damage. They have bleed damage, poison damage, disease damage, and physical damage. Again, physical damage is its own category. While bleed, poison, and disease fall under the they're influenced by your amount of stamina and weapon damage, physical damage is still its own category. But those 4 damages types are all enhanced by stamina. Now, we also went over the resistances before. Spell resistance will defend, like I said, against magical attacks. That includes magic, flame, frost, and shock. While physical will decrease the amount of damage I take from physical-based attacks, which includes physical damage, bleed damage, poison damage, and disease damage. With these different damage types are these things called status effects, and a lot of these damage types have a chance to put these statuses on your enemy. Frost has a chance to put Shield on your enemy, which applies a debuff called Minor Maim, reducing your target's damage done by 15%. Shock damage has a chance to put on Concussion, which applies a debuff called Minor Vulnerability, which increases damage taken by 8% for 4 seconds. Flame attacks have a chance to put Burning on your target, which is a status effect that deals flame damage over time for 4 seconds, and it will deal damage every 2 seconds. You have, from poison damage, you have the status effect Poisoned, which deals damage over 6 seconds, and this, like I said, has a chance to proc from any poison damage. And then you also have Disease, which applies a debuff called Minor Defile that reduces your target's healing taken by 15%. So these are all different types of status effects that are placed on your opponents from various types of damage that you deal. Ultimate ability costs ultimate. It doesn't cost stamina or magicka like your other skills do. This resource, ultimate, is generated while you're in combat and while you deal damage with light attacks, which is why it's very important to make sure that you're using light attacks, which are the simple left click attacks. It's important to use those light attacks while you are in combat. Now, when you get 250 ultimate, I'm able to use this skill and it will deal its damage. Now, Ultimate abilities scale with your highest resource. So because Magicka is my highest resource, this is going to deal its damage based on how much Magicka I have. It's still, because it's flame damage, it's still going to be beneficial. It's going to be more beneficial to me to use this than somebody using it as a stamina character, but ultimate abilities scale with your highest resource and not with like the type of damage that they do. But other things such as penetration, critical damage, etc., that's going to be influenced based on the damage type. The next topic that I'm going to cover is weapon swapping. Simply put, weapon swapping in ESO allows you to have two different ability bars via two different weapons. So as you can see on the left side of my screen, I have an Inferno Staff of Mechanical Acuity on my front bar and a Maelstrom Lightning Staff on what's called my back bar. Now you unlock your back bar weapon when you reach level 15. Now as you can see, while at the current time, my front bar weapon, my Inferno Staff of Mechanical Acuity, is highlighted. Now, as you can see here, I have 6 different abilities on my bar. We have the 5 primary abilities and my ultimate ability. Now, if I press my weapon swap key, you can check your keybinds for what the default key is for that. But if I press my weapon swap key, I have 5 different abilities in a brand new ultimate. And now, as you can see, I am using my back bar lightning staff weapon. Now, like I said, this is unlocked at level 15, and it allows your character to use a completely new set of skills on the secondary bar, increasing your character's total skills from 6 to 12. The next thing we are going to cover is skills and Skyshards and what they are and how to get skill points to unlock skills and just everything that you could possibly need to know about skills and skill points. Now, when you level up in the Elder Scrolls Online, at least when you level up 1 to 50, every time you level, you get this thing called a skill point. And skill points are like a currency in a way that you have to use to unlock skills. Unlocking a skill costs a skill point, or unlocking a passive costs a skill point. Now, people ask, well, Dottz, what's the difference between an active ability and a passive ability? An active ability is something that you need to put on your ability bar and that you need to physically press. So pressing Flame Lash will lash at my enemy with flame, dealing flame damage. While my passive ability, let's say Combustion, just increases the damage of my burning and poison status effects, which we did cover in a previous section, by 50%. So this is just on my character at all times. I don't have to press anything, do anything. By just simply investing a point into Combustion, I am getting this benefit. But you do need to pay attention to your passives and really read the tooltip to understand in what situations they're useful. Like, for example, Ancient Knowledge. Gain a bonus effect based on your staff type while you have a Destruction Staff ability slotted. So if you don't have a Destruction Staff skill slotted, you are going to be getting no benefit from Ancient Knowledge. So if you don't plan on using any Destruction Staff abilities, this passive is useless to you. The way I always say, the quick and dirty way to know passives is you're generally going to want almost all of your class passives, if not all of them. The passives for your main armor type, as well as the passives for any other skill line that you use abilities from, or if you're PvPing, you're also going to want the PvP passives. But that's kind of like the quick and dirty explanation of passives. In terms of active abilities, though, unlocking an ability will give you the base will give you like the base ability. So let's say I have this morphed into Burning Embers, but the base ability is called Searing Strike. It costs magic, it deals some damage, and then it deals a little bit of a dot afterwards. Now that is the base skill called Searing Strike. When Searing Strike levels up to rank 4, because as you can see, your ability bars here, your abilities have skill bars here, and as you gain experience, these abilities will get leveled up. As you level up Searing Strike to rank 4, I can morph it, and I have 2 different morph choices. One was called Burning Embers, which was the one that I chose, that in addition to its original effects, it also heals me for a percentage of the damage. But then there's another morph called Venomous Claw, which changes the ability to a stamina ability and then deals poison damage, and instead the damage over time effect lasts longer. So when you are able to get these abilities to rank 4, you're going to see a little up arrow here. You can click that, look at the 2 new abilities that you like, the 2 new choices that you have, and you can morph the ability into something new. Now, as you can see, abilities, like I said, they level, and they all level in different ways. Abilities, though, level for when you gain experience while they're on your active bar. So, Flame Lash, Burning Embers, Engulfing Flames, Rearming Trap, Inner Light, and Fiery Rage are going to would be gaining experience while I'm gaining experience on this bar. While stuff on my back bar, such as Eruption, Blockade of Storms, Volatile Armor, etc., they're not going to be gaining any experience if I'm on this bar while my character gains experience. The abilities on your currently active bar are the ones that level up. And you do want to always level up your abilities, even after you morph them, because leveling them up will actually make them do more damage. So it's very important to level up your abilities even after you morph them. Now, skill lines level up a little bit differently, though, and it's important to know how your skill lines level up. And I'd recommend hovering your mouse over them to learn. Ardent Flame. Improve this skill by earning experience, and you can equip additional Ardent Flame spells to increase the skill's advancement. So by simply leveling up, you can level up Ardent Flame. But let's say for something like Destruction Staff, you improve this skill by earning experience with Destruction Staff abilities and a weapon, like a Destruction Staff weapon, equipped. Additional Destruction Staff abilities will also increase the rate at which you gain XP with the skill line. So it's very important to understand how your various skill lines gain experience so that you can know how to properly level them up. Now, you're probably wondering, so I only get skill points through leveling. There's 50 levels. That's not a whole lot of skill points, and it looks like there's a lot of stuff to spend points on. Well, there are these beautiful things in the world called Skyshards, and I kind of went over them a little bit earlier with an add-on called Skyshards. They're denoted on the map by this symbol, and collecting Skyshards allows you to get more skill points. Every time you pick up 3 Skyshards, you gain a skill point. So collecting Skyshards throughout your adventures is very, very important to make sure that you're gaining the proper amount of skill points to really make sure that you're able to outfit your character in the way that you want to. Now, I'm going to let y'all in on a little secret. There are these instances throughout the world called public dungeons. They are shown by this symbol on the map. If you go into a public dungeon, every public dungeon has a Skyshard within it and has a main boss inside the dungeon. They're public, so you can just see there's going to be people from all over the world inside this dungeon. Anybody can enter this. And when you enter it, if you beat the main boss inside this public dungeon, you will gain a skill point. Just straight up gain a skill point. So if you're exploring and you see one of these public dungeons, I highly recommend going into it, because going into it guarantees you a Skyshard and guarantees you a skill point from beating the final boss. So doing public dungeons combined with leveling up, combined with collecting Skyshards, is going to be a great way to maximize the amount of skill points that your character has access to. Alright, the next section of this guide that we are going to cover is gear and weapons. Now, unlike other MMORPGs, you're not limited to what gear and weapon you can use on a specific class. Any class can use any weapon and wear any gear that they want. But obviously, based on the role that you're trying to play, certain weapons are going to benefit certain playstyles more than others. Now, there's 4 main playstyles in this game. A Magicka damage dealer, which uses Magicka as their primary resource. We've covered that in an earlier section. We have a stamina damage dealer, a tank, which deals with taking on a lot of damage from opponents and trying to keep enemies off their teammates, or healers, which is involved with healing your team and keeping everybody alive. Those are the 4 different styles, and each of those styles has certain weapons and armor combinations that benefit them better than others, and I'm going to explain why and what situations you'd want to use those things. And then I'm also going to cover traits, which are certain properties that different gear and weapon has that is going to make it better in certain situations. Now, starting off with the weapons, there are 6 different weapon lines in the Elder Scrolls Online. We have two-handed weapons, similar to like big two-handed swords, two-handed axes, and two-handed maces. We have one-handed shield, dual wield, which is like dual-wielding swords, maces, daggers, axes, etc. We have a bow skill line, the destruction staff skill line, which is lightning staves, ice staves, and fire staves. And then we also have the restoration staff skill line, which is your healing staff. Now, starting with the weapons, you're going to notice right away when you look at certain weapon skill lines that they favor a certain play style. Like if you look at something like uppercut, costs stamina. Obviously, someone who is a stamina damage dealer is going to want to take advantage out of something like the two-handed skill line and the skills within it. But then if you look at something like the destruction staff, you can see that the abilities here cost magicka. So more likely than not, you're going to be a magicka damage dealer taking advantage of these abilities because they don't cost stamina, therefore they're not getting stronger with stamina, and because they're getting stronger with magicka, a magicka damage dealer would find greater use out of them. Now, I'm going to go over the most common weapon usages. I have an entire weapon guide on my channel, check it out, but besides the magicka and stamina costs of the abilities, you also need to take into account passives when choosing your weapons. For example, on my player versus player build for my magicka based Dragon Knight, I still use a one-handed shield. Even though, as you can see, the abilities all cost stamina, I use it for the passives. Again, it's kind of like something I covered in an earlier section. Why would you use something of the opposite resource? It's for the utility that it offers, and that utility comes from the passives. Now, just to give you a quick and dirty explanation, if you're a stamina damage dealer, you're going to want to take advantage of two-handed weapons, dual-wield weapons, and bows. Those are going to be your 3 best weapon types. More often than not, you're going to be using either two-handed weapon or dual-wield on one bar and then a bow on the other bar. If you're PvPing, you could also possibly take advantage of one-handed shield, but for the most part, you're going to be using either dual wield and bow, but now with Summerset, two-handed is also a viable option for your melee weapon bar. Now, if you're a magicka damage dealer, you're most likely going to be using 2 different destruction staff bars in player versus environment when you're just questing it out in the world. The best way to do it is to use 2 different destruction staves. Most classes will take advantage of 2 fire staves, but other classes can take advantage of either dual lightning staves or 1 fire staff and 1 lightning staff. But for the most part, your fire staves are going to be your best type of staff for when you're using destruction staff on a damage dealer in player versus environment. When you get into PvP, it gets a little bit more complicated and it gets a little more class dependent. But for the most part in PvP as a magicka damage dealer, you're going to be using either one-handed shield, destruction staff, and or restoration staff. Those are going to be your 3 skill lines that you're choosing from. Restoration staff, because all of these skills cost magicka and it offers a lot of heals, it's a very good line for a defensive weapon bar when you're fighting other players. Magicka used to be able to use dual wields prior to the Summerset patch, but it's kind of fallen out of favor with the buffs, because they buffed destruction staves pretty nicely in Summerset. So dual wield is still an option, because like one of these passives makes it so that you just gain it increases your damage done with swords. So if you use 2 swords and get this twin blade and blunt passive, it allows you to deal extra damage. But right now, that is not as good as it was because of the buffs to destruction staff. So in my opinion, you're going to want to pull from either restoration staff, destruction staff, or one-handed shield. Dual wield can be used, but it's not nearly as viable as it once was. For a healer, you're going to want to use a restoration staff bar and a destruction staff bar. The reasoning is that when you play a healer, there's 2 key abilities you need to use as a healer. You need to use Elemental Drain, because Elemental Drain applies a very important debuff to enemies that healers are usually responsible for. it's that one minor Magicka steal on the bottom, which causes your allies to restore Magicka while damaging your enemies. It's very important for healers to run this because it provides a lot of group support and allows your Magicka DPS to be able to sustain their resources very well. And then you also have Elemental Blockade, so healers will find use out of a lightning staff because, as you can see, that Blockade of Storms sets concussed enemies off balance. I kind of went over status effects in a previous section, so you could take a look at that. But off balance is a very important debuff in the game, and there's a lot of passives in the champion point system that I'm going to go over later, and just the game in general that makes, without going too deep into it, basically, you want, as a healer, your job is to set things off balance, and you do that via Elemental Blockade. So you're going to want to also run a Lightning Staff as well. As a tank, for the most part, you're going to want to either run 2 one-handed shield bars or a one-handed shield and destruction staff bar, utilizing the lightning staff again for the same reason with elemental blockade and applying off balance to your enemies. If you're a newer tank, I'd say you're probably better off going 2 one-handed shield bars. But if you kind of want to make questing a little bit easier and also get used to the more advanced weapons of tanking, one-handed shield and destruction staff might be a bit easier because, again, it'll probably make questing a little bit easier because you'll have more damage while you're actually playing. In terms of our armor types, there's 3 different armor types in the game: light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor. And you can tell just by reading the passives what play styles that these would favor. Increases your Magicka recovery by 4%. Reduces the Magicka cost of your abilities by 2%. Increases your spell resistance. Increases spell critical. Increases spell penetration. So as you can see, light armor is going to favor Magicka damage dealers and healers. Medium armor increases weapon critical, stamina recovery, and reduces cost. It reduces the cost of sneak. It increases your weapon damage and increases movement speed, all stuff that would benefit a stamina damage dealer. Then we have heavy armor. Increases physical resistance, increases health recovery and resources gained. Maximum health, increases resources restored from heavy attacks. Increases, which I'll go over in another section. Increases your healing received by 8%, obviously going to favor a tanky playstyle. But just because medium armor is good for damage, stamina damage dealers does not mean that medium armor users cannot wear light armor and heavy armor. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. There is a guild passive, which I'm going to go over guilds later in the game. This is a non-player character guild that you can join. And there's a passive called Undaunted Metal, which increases your maximum health, stamina, and Magicka by 2% per armor type worn. What this means is that if you wear 3 different weights of armor, aka if you wear at least one piece of light, medium, and heavy, you will be sure to gain 6% additional stats just by wearing a different type of armor. And as you can see, you only need to wear 5 pieces of light armor equipped to get access to these 2 passives from the light armor tree, 5 pieces of medium armor to get access to agility, and 5 pieces of heavy armor to get access to revitalize and rapid mending, which means that if you wear, let's say, 5 pieces of heavy armor, you can also wear 1 piece of light and 1 piece of medium, and you'll gain not only all of the heavy armor bonuses, you'll actually gain some of the medium and light armor bonuses as well that don't require you to wear 5 pieces, but you'll also gain the full benefit of Undaunted Metal. And that is very, very important for your end game character builds and will give you a lot of additional stats. So I definitely recommend leveling up all of your all of your armor types, regardless of your preferred playstyle. Do keep in mind though, in order to unlock these skill lines, I do believe you need to wear 2 or 3 pieces of an armor type at a time. So if you do go right into wearing a 511, I believe you'll only unlock whichever weight of the 5 you're wearing, and you won't unlock the other 2. So you need to put on at least at some point, I think 2 or 3 pieces of the various armor types in order to unlock them and be able to start leveling them. Next thing I'm going to cover, though, is armor and weapon traits, because this goes hand in hand with this section. So if you look at, for example, my Zan's Visage here, increases it's divines. Increases my mundus stone effect by 6.5%. I will go over mundus stones later in the video. And then you also have this Inferno Staff of the Seducer is infused. So that's the trait on this weapon is infused, and the trait on this helmet is divines. And traits are a way for you to gain extra stats from wearing, you know, different things on different pieces of armor. Like you could see on my shoulder, it's infused. Increases the armor enchantment on this item by 17%. There's a whole list of different traits for your weapons and your armor that you can have throughout the game, and I'm going to tell you what those are right now. For your weapons, you have Charged, which increases your chance to apply a status effect. You have Defending, which increases your armor and spell resistance. Infused, which increases your weapon enchantment value and reduces the cooldown. You have Nirnhoned, which increases the damage of the weapon. Powered, which increases your healing done. Precise increases your critical. Sharpened increases your spell and armor penetration. Training, which increases your experience gained from kills, and Decisive, which causes you to gain ultimate. For your armor traits, you have Divines, which increases your mundus stone effects, Impenetrable, which increases critical resistance, Infused, which increases armor enchantment effect, Nirnhoned, which increases spell resistance, Invigorating, which increases your regeneration, Reinforce, which increases your armor, Sturdy, which reduces block cost, Training, which increases experience gained from kills, and Well-Fitted, which reduces the stamina cost of sprinting and roll dodge. You might be wondering, Dottz, that's a lot of traits. What's the best? What should I be using? For the this is going to be general. This is going to be very general that will apply in the overwhelming majority of situations. Obviously, there are going to be certain specifics. If an experienced player is watching this, there's going to be specifics where these may not hold true, but this is going to hold true for the overwhelming majority of situations. As a Magicka damage dealer in player, you know, while you're just questing throughout the world, your best trait is Infused. Infused is the best trait that you could use for your weapons. Increasing your weapon enchantment is extremely good and will net you the most damage. On your other bar, on your secondary bar, I would recommend Nirnhoned. Increases the damage of the weapon. So your main weapon will be Infused and your secondary weapon will be Nirnhoned. It's the same thing for stamina damage dealing. Your main weapon is going to be Infused, your back bar weapon is going to be Nirnhoned, and if you're deciding to dual wield, your offhand weapon should either be Precise or Sharpened, depending on what you personally want. In terms of healing, your main healing weapon, which is your Restoration Staff, should be powered to increase your healing done, while your Destruction Staff for your Lightning Staff should be charged to increase your chance to apply that status effect in order to increase the amount of off-balance uptime that we discussed earlier. In terms of tanks, we are going to want both weapons to be infused. The reason being is that there's a lot of good enchants that tanks will have access to that will allow them to put some really strong debuffs on their enemies. So infused is going to be the best for tanks as well. In terms of your armor traits, for damage dealers, you're going to want to be using divines on everything. For the most part, same thing for healers. You're pretty much going to want to go divines on everything. You can go infused on your larger gear pieces. And the reason I'd say go infused on your larger gear pieces is because if you can see the enchant on this gear, so you could also enchant your gear to give it more stats. And as you can see, this only gives 379 magicka, but on my chest, I get 800 magicka. Now, if infused increases the enchantment by a certain percentage, obviously, it's better to increase a bigger number by a percentage than a smaller number by a percentage. So if you do decide to go infused on your healer, you'd want to do it on the larger gear pieces. So you could go infused or you could go full divines. It's really up to you. In terms of your tanks, you're going to want a mixture of sturdy and infused. The reason being is that you can, again, put the infused on those big pieces to make your enchants on those pieces really strong, and then your other smaller pieces are good to make sturdy, because sturdy, again, reduces the cost of block, and as a tank, you're going to be doing a lot of blocking, so being able to block as much incoming damage as possible is going to be really, really good. From a PvP perspective, I know that was basically PvE. PvP it's a lot more dynamic. For the most part, in terms of PvP, you're going to want to make sure that you have impenetrable gear on. That one that I said gives you critical resistance. It's very important for PvP. I covered that stat earlier in the guide, so if you do not know, go check that out. Impenetrable is going to be a very important gear trait, and again, you're going to want to really mix impenetrable with other gear traits, really depending on your build. Again, the weapon traits are going to vary too for PvP builds. I would say practice and learn the game a little bit more and understand how all these traits work and interact with your character before really looking into it. But I guess if you do really want to know, weapon traits I'd recommend for PvP are any combination of defending, infused, Nern honed, and sharpened. While for armor, I would recommend combinations of impenetrable, sturdy, well-fitted, and divines if you want to go super heavy damage. But that is what I'd recommend for general playing. But again, PvP builds are very personal, so it's going to really be up to what you want later in time. The next thing that I'm going to cover is mundus stones. So what are mundus stones and which is the best one for your character? Mundus stones are basically these big rocks that you can interact with out in the world that give your character a passive bonus. If you played Skyrim, think of the standing stones. It's basically what it is, but for EA. So now these mundus stones, you can go out into the world and you can find them. This is their icon on the map, and you can go and interact with a mundus stone and get that passive buff like I described. But the thing is, you can only have one mundus stone active on your character at a time. So it's very important to pick a good mundus stone for your character and for your playstyle so that you can make sure that you're gaining the best stats possible. Now you might be wondering, well, Dottz, what are these mundus stones? What is the best one for my character? I will tell you what these ones are, and I'll tell you in general which ones you should be looking to use. A lot of times, you know, this can be personal preference in certain situations, but I'll give you guys in general the best ones for you to use. So the first one that we have is the Lady, which increases your physical and spell resistance. We have the Lover, which increases your physical and spell penetration. The Lord, which increases your maximum health. The Mage, which increases your maximum magicka. The Tower, which increases your maximum stamina. The Atronach, which increases your magicka recovery. The Serpent, which increases your stamina recovery. The Shadow, which increases your critical strike damage. The Ritual, which increases your healing effectiveness. The Thief, which increases your critical strike chance. The Warrior, which increases your weapon damage. The Apprentice, which increases your spell damage. And the Steed, which increases your run speed and increases your health recovery as well. Now, in general, for magicka damage dealers, you're going to, playing in questing and fighting monsters and doing trials and dungeons, you're going to want to be using either the Lover Stone or the Apprentice. Those are your two best bets. I would recommend the Apprentice. The Apprentice increases your spell damage. It gives you the most bang for your buck in terms of stats, especially when you use Divines. It gives you a lot of return on spell damage, and it's just a really, really good stone to use. The Lover is also not a bad choice. Getting that extra penetration is really beneficial, but I would recommend the Apprentice for sure. And then the same logic applies to stamina damage dealers, except for I would recommend the Warrior, which was the one that increases your weapon damage. And again, the Lover is also a good option as well, but I'm a bigger fan of the Warrior myself. In terms of healers, you're looking at either using the Atronach or the Ritual. The Atronach, again, increases your magic recovery, while the Ritual increases your healing effectiveness. In general, I think the Atronach is more beneficial to your character. Having magic recovery and a lot of magic recovery on a healer is extremely important. You want to always be recovering as much of your resources as possible, so I would definitely recommend the Atronach first, but the Ritual is also a solid choice. And then for tanks, your choices, I've seen various mundus stone choices based on the build, but the two most common ones I've seen are the Lord, which increases your maximum health, and the Atronach, which increases your magicka recovery. So I would just say pick whichever one you prefer. I've seen both used and both used successfully, so I'm gonna leave it up to you to decide which is best for you. Now, in terms of PvP, because people are always going to ask about that, there's a lot of viable choices here. For magic and damage dealers, your viable choices, in my opinion, you have the mage, you have the atronach, and you have the apprentice. For stamina damage dealers in PvP, the warrior is a really good option. The serpent is a good option, as well as the tower. Or the lover. Lover is also good for magic and damage dealers or stamina damage dealers. Also another good choice. In terms of tanks for PvP, it's the same PvE choices, and then same thing for healers. But those are your mundus stones, what they do, the benefits, and then which ones I think are best for the individual classes in individual situations. The next thing that I'm going to cover is NPC Guilds. So, if you've played Skyrim or Oblivion before, you will undoubtedly know what the different guilds are, such as the Mages Guild, Thieves Guild, Dark Brotherhood, etc. All these different guilds you can have access to in the Elder Scrolls Online, and they all come with an additional host of active or passive abilities that your character can have access to. Now, just like in Skyrim, you can join as many of these guilds as you want. You can join literally all of them, or if you really want to RP, you can only join some of them. But I would recommend for all your characters, if you're not trying to RP, join all of the guilds you possibly can. A lot of them have really good quest lines that I would definitely recommend working on. And specifically the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild, and then moving into Summerset, the Sigic Order, they have really, and the Undaunted, those four guilds all have a really good passive and active skills that I would recommend for many characters. The majority of characters could take benefit from those skill lines, and would definitely recommend picking those up. Now, the Fighters Guild can be found in any of your starting cities. Will be shown on the map by the sword symbol. You simply just walk in, talk to the NPC in here, and say, I'd like to join the Fighters Guild, and you will be a part of the Fighters Guild, and then you can start that quest, and you will unlock the skill line. With the Mages Guild, it's the same thing as the Fighters Guild. Walk in, say, hey, I'd like to join, and you can simply join. For Summerset, with the Sigic Order, as well as the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood, there's like you have to start a quest in order to gain access to those guilds. The Sigic Order quest can be found in Summerset, while the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood quest starters can be found in your journal, where you're able to start the DLC quests. So you guys know that's under Collections, Stories, and you will be able to see all of the different guild DLCs that you're able to access to. And as you can see, you can start the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood quests and get right into those guilds. Now, the Undaunted, I just realized I did forget to cover. You can find in the inns in your starting town. So specifically, if you look at the Daggerfall Covenant, we're looking at Daggerfall. You can find them in the starting town's inn. For the Ebonheart Pact, we are looking at Davin's Watch, and for the Aldmeri Dominion, I believe we are looking at Aradon. And we're looking at Volkel Guard. You can find the Undaunted in any of the inns in those towns. That'll give you a quest starter in order to join them. All of these guilds level up in different ways, though, so you need to make sure you understand how those guilds level up. Simply hovering your mouse over top the skill bar for the skill line will tell you how to level up the skills. So, for example, the Fighters Guild, you have to destroy Dark Anchors and kill Daedra. For the Mages Guild, you have to discover lore books. For the Thieves Guild, you have to commit crimes on the tip board, complete heists, aid your guild mates, and increase your rank in the Thieves Guild. For the Undaunted, you have to complete dungeon achievements and Undaunted pledges in order to increase your rank with them. So as you can see, just by hovering your mouse over them, you can see how you can rank up all of the different guild skill lines in order to augment your character's power even further past your class and weapon and armor skill lines. The next thing I'm going to cover is Player Guilds, Guild Store, and the Guild Traders. Unlike other games where you can only be in one guild at a time, in ESO you can join 5 player guilds at the exact same time. And these guilds are for your entire account and not for just your single character. So even if you, let's say, log out of one character and log into another one, you'll still be in the guilds on that character. But because ESO allows you to be in 5 different guilds at the same time, you can really diversify all the types of guilds you're in so that you have different guilds for different experiences and different things that you want to do. For example, there's social guilds which focus on social interaction, usually will do a wide variety of things within the game. You'll have PvE guilds which focus mainly on trials and dungeons, PvP guilds which focus on Cyrodiil, battlegrounds, and Imperial City, and then you have guilds that focus on trading, which focus on making money through guild traders, which I'm also going to cover in this section as well. And then you also have role-playing guilds which focus on role-playing and doing those types of activities. Now, me personally, I recommend joining a wide variety of guilds, but definitely be in at least one trading guild, because trading guilds are very important for you to be able to sell things through the guild store. Now, you might be asking, well, Dottz, what is the guild store? So the guild store is something that you're able to access through the bank. Let me just fast forward here to when I'm actually in a bank. Once you're at a banker, you have an option to access your own personal bank, your guild's bank, the guild store, or say goodbye. So if you go to your guild store, you will have access to your guild's store. Now, basically what happens is that a guild store allows you to buy and trade items within your guild. So as you can see, this is my guild, Dippin' Dots. If I list something here on the guild store for sale, other members of my guild will be able to buy those items and also list items for sale that I could search for and possibly purchase. Now, you might be wondering, well, Dottz, if I'm only in a guild, if I can only list items on one guild at a time, that's a really small pool for me to be able to sell my items. That is why it's important to join a trading guild, because trading guilds have guild traders. As you can see, Hayaya and Mournhold is my trading guild's guild trader. And basically what that does is it makes your guild store public facing. It's an actual NPC in the world that your guild can basically put a bid on, and at the end of the week, whichever guild put the biggest bid on that trader gets that trader for the week, and it basically makes your guild store public facing so that other people are able to purchase from, the guild I'm in, Spicy Economics, people are able to purchase from our guild store. People cannot sell on our guild store, though, because they are not in our guild. You can only sell on guild stores that you're a part of, but you can purchase from any guild store that you are a part of that does or does not have a trader, or any guild trader throughout the world that, again, makes those guild stores public facing. That is why, in my opinion, being in at least one trading guild is very important. It's because it allows your items to be seen by a wider mass of people instead of just by your actual guild. The next thing I'm going to cover is mount training, bag space, and the bank. Now, when you play in the game, you're able to have a mount. Obviously, you can ride around on your horse and do all these wonderful things, run around, sprint, and allows you to go a lot faster. But when you're gonna notice that when you first get your mount, it's not as fast as mine, and you can't sprint as long. And that's because in ESO, you need to train your mount at a stable master in order to get it to a point that it's able to do all these wonderful things. So you talk to the stable master, view stable, and you're able to increase your horses or your mount's speed, stamina, and carrying capacity once every 20 hours for about 250 gold. Now, you can increase your speed of your horse by up to 60%, your stamina by up to 60%, and your carrying capacity by up to 60%. So speed increases the movement speed while mounted. Stamina increases how long you're able to sprint and how many hits you're able to take before you become dismounted. And your carrying capacity increases your personal bag size by a certain amount. The order that I always recommend people do things is I always recommend speed first. The second thing I recommend is that if you're going to primarily be PvPing, I would recommend stamina second. But if you're going to be primarily PvEing, I'd recommend carrying capacity second, and then do whichever one is left third. Now, there's another way that you're able to expand your character's bag space besides the stable and the trader, and that is by going to a pack merchant. Pack merchants can be found in various cities and can be seen here. As you can see, bag merchant. You would walk up to the merchant, say, hello, I'd like to buy a backpack upgrade, and she would say, I would like to increase your inventory by 10 more slots, and it would be a gold cost. You hit accept, and then your bag size increases. You also have access to a bank in ESO. A bank is basically shared storage across all of your characters that they all have access to. So if I went on any one of my characters, I would see all of these items in the bank. The bank is, like I said, shared across all my characters. Items, currency, you name it, you can store it. You could also buy bank space for a gold fee, and if you have ESO Plus, you're going to get double the bank space for that same gold fee. You also have access to a guild bank. You have access to the guild store that is covered in the last section, etc. Now, when you're a new player, it's going to be very tempting to spend money on gear and all these wonderful things while you're leveling. In my opinion, you don't need to spend any money on gear or really anything while you're leveling except for these three things: upgrading your bank space, upgrading your bag space, and upgrading your horse. Save your money until you are fully leveled up to the maximum level for gear, which I'll cover in a later section, in the champion points section, and save your money and just focus it on spending it only on these three key things. You could also buy buff food if you want, but I will cover that in the consumables section. The next thing that I'm going to cover is keybinds. So I'm sure you can guess based on the title of this section, this simply has to do with your keybinds and controls for ESO. This can be accessed by pressing escape and going down to controls, and you'll see your keybinds here. You're able to just change and adjust these for all the different actions in game, up to a total of 4 different bindings for each specific thing. This is at least what the PC interface looks like. I'm sure the console interface looks a little bit different. I would definitely recommend, if you're on PC, picking up Votan's keybinder. And the reason I recommend that is because if you do not do that, your keybinds are character specific and not account specific. And trust me, there's a lot of different options and bindings that you can do for not only just the default actions, but for your add-on actions. And take it from me, it's a pain in the butt to redo them every single time you make a new character. So Votan's just allows you to have those be account bound and not character bound. But again, you can pretty much keybind any action in game, so you can explore these menus to find out how you want to change your keybinds to your liking. If you want to know my specific keybinds, I have a separate guide that covers those on my channel, so I'd recommend checking that out. The next section that I'm going to cover is the outfit station, previously known as the dye station. The outfit station allows you to change everything about your character's appearance, from the colors of your armor to the style of the armor. It can be seen on the map via this symbol that you see on the banner in front of me. And when you go to it, you're going to have a host of different options for customizing your character. So if I interact with it, you can see that I'm able to change the color of my gear via dyes. Dyes are obtained by getting achievements in the Elder Scrolls Online and doing certain things in game. Now, what I would recommend doing is, by default, it is sorted by rarity. I recommend changing this to sort by hue. It makes it a lot easier when you're looking at your armor. But by getting to this dye station and doing all of these different achievements in ESO, you can make your armor different colors and really customize your character to be unique to you. In addition, introduced in the one of the previous patches was something called Outfit Station, which allowed you to not only customize the dye and the color of your gear, but change the style of the gear as well to make it look certain ways. These different styles are obtained through what's called motifs, and motifs can be found throughout the world and purchased on guild traders. Do keep in mind that in order to learn many motifs, your crafting needs to be a certain level, so I will cover crafting later on in the guide. But once you learn those motifs on your character, they become account-wide for the outfit station, and you're able to change your character's gear to look like a certain motif style instead of what your gear looks like by default. Now, I know I'm going to get 100 questions asking, Dottz Gaming, what armor are you wearing and what dye are you wearing? So I will tell you guys what I am wearing. My head is a Boz Watch. My shoulders are a Boz Watch Light. My shoulders are Silken Ring Light. My gloves are Thieves Guild Heavy. My legs are Mercenary Heavy. My chest is Mercenary Heavy. My waist is Mercenary Heavy. And my boots are Skin Changer Heavy. In terms of color, colors, we are using LeMay's White, which is getting from Master Level Vampire, and then we also have Cold Harbor Ash Black, which is from beating the main quest line. My weapon is also, I have a Daedric Staff for my main weapon, and then I believe for my shields, when I use one-handed shield, I use a Minotaur shield, and I'm using a Yokadin one-handed sword. I'm sure people are also going to ask me, Dottz, how do I get this skin underneath? You get this skin via doing one of the harder trials in the game on veteran mode. It's called Maw of Lorcage through the Thieves Guild DLC. It is, at least at the time of recording this, it's the third hardest trial behind Asylum Sanctorium, Halls of Fabrication, and then it becomes Maw of Lorcage. I'm sure Cloud Rest come Summerset is going to be really difficult as well. But Maw of Lorcage is no walk in the park, and it's definitely one of the harder trials. But if you can beat it on veteran mode with a competent group, you will be able to get this skin as well. So that is what I'm wearing, and this is the outfit station. The next thing that I'm going to cover is wayshrines. Wayshrines are the method of fast travel within the Elder Scrolls Online and can be seen by this icon on your map. Now, basically, whenever you're anywhere in the world, you could teleport to a wayshrine if you would like to by simply opening your map, clicking the wayshrine, travel to Daggerfall Wayshrine. It would cost a certain amount of gold, and I would hit confirm, and I would be able to travel there for, like I said, that gold cost. Now, after traveling to a wayshrine using that method, if you try to teleport somewhere again almost immediately using that same method, the gold cost is going to be significantly higher. So do keep that in mind. The best way to fast travel using wayshrines is to actually go to the wayshrine itself, hit use, and then you'll be able to travel to other wayshrines for free. And after that, subsequent teleports aren't going to cost anything extra. But if you want another, like, cheeky way to teleport around with, maybe you don't know a certain wayshrine, or, maybe you want to jump somewhere instantly from a certain spot and you're not near a wayshrine, but you don't want to pay the gold cost, you could teleport instantly to group members or to guild members. If you, let's say, because I'm not in a group right now, I'll just show you based on the guild I'm in. If you look at, see, my guild, I'm able to go to any of these players, right click, and go to travel to player. So I could teleport to this person in Stormhaven instantly by right clicking them and traveling to them. It would cost me nothing, and I'd be able to do it without going to a wayshrine. So those are your methods of fast travel within the Elder Scrolls Online. Or if you could also, one last thing before I forget, you could also travel to your player in-game house, and that'll put you where that house is. So sometimes can be a little inconvenient for traveling because you can only travel to the locations that your houses are in, but still, it is a method of fast travel nevertheless. The next thing I'm going to cover is maximum level and champion points. ESO has a maximum level of 50. Once you pass level 50, you become champion point level 10, and you get access to the champion point tree. The champion point tree works very similar to the like a passives and ranking tree in Skyrim, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to look at it and go, hey, this looks pretty familiar. Basically, what the champion point tree does is it allows you to place points to earn more passives. For example, if we look at Shadow Ward, it reduces the cost of block by 7.4%. Elemental Expert increases your Flame Frost Shock and magic damage by 11%, etc. You're able to place points into here and gain more passives. So CP 10 means that you would have 10 champion points to place throughout the different sections. Now, as you can see right now, my champion level is 740, and this bar is blue. So once I get it to the next level, I will gain another blue point, and then that bar will either turn red or green, and I'll move my way towards moving a red or green point, and then after that, it will move towards the third color. Let's just say green for argument's sake. It'll earn me towards a green point, and then after that, it will cycle back to blue. So every 3 levels, you earn 1 different point. for the different categories, and then you're able to place those points. It's not like you can get, let's say, 720 points and place them all into a blue tree. It's going to be equally distributed between these 3 trees. Now, up until champion point 300, these CP points, when placed, also give you stats based on the color. Points placed in the Apprentice and the Atronach and the Ritual will give you Magicka. Points placed in the Steed, the Lady, and the Lord will give you health. And points placed in the Tower, the Lover, and the Shadow will give you stamina. But remember, this is only up to CP 300. Past that, you will only gain the various champion point bonuses based on where you place those points. Now, another big question that I know people aren't going to know is, how does gear leveling work in this game, you know, compared to the champion point system and levels in general? Gear is scaled up to champion point 160. That is the maximum level of gear. You'll not find CP 500 gear. You won't find CP 300 gear. It is simply CP 160. That is the highest level of gear. Past that, gear does not get any better. So that is why I always recommend to people, don't worry about buying gear and purchasing gear and getting any of the gear until you're CP 160, because you're just going to out-level it really, really quickly. Once you're CP 160, which is known as a gear cap, you're able to buy your set of end-game gear and really be able to customize it and get it to however you like. And then past that, you really only need to get new gear if you want to use something that you think is better, or you want to make a different build, etc. But that is how max level and the champion point systems work in the Elder Scrolls Online. Another topic that I'm going to cover with this, though, is scaling, in terms of the game's level scaling, because I don't think I actually cover this in any other section, and I just realized that I need to include this because this is very important. Way back when, ZOS put in an update called 1 Tamriel, and basically what that update did is that it caused you to scale and the world to scale around you. Basically, it took a more theme park leveling process and turned it into a very sandbox leveling process, because the whole world scales around you. So no matter what level you are, you can go to whatever zone you want and fight the monsters there, because you will be scaled up to their level. The reason that gear cap is CP 160 is because that is the metric that scaling is based around in-game. The whole game is scaled up to CP 160. Obviously, certain mobs are going to be stronger than others. You know, they're going to have better stats. You know, it's not like, you know, oh, I'm CP 720, I'm going to go solo this group dungeon boss. That's not how it works. But when you're throughout the world in general, this is the metric used for scaling. That is why when you are leveling, some of you might notice, Dottz, I'm CP 20, and there's a guy who's level 30 who has more health than me. Why is that? The reasoning is because of the scaling. Because you're CP 30, for example, you have access to the champion point tree, you're going to have more skill points, you're going to have more passives, your character is going to have better gear, you're just going to be stronger overall. But the reason that somebody who's level 30 is going to have more base stats is because having those extra base stats is going to allow them to compete in a dungeon or in an like the land content, like around the world, and still be able to kill things and be able to live long enough to kill said things. If they didn't have more health, they wouldn't live long enough in order to do anything. So that is why. That doesn't mean that somebody who's level 30 is necessarily stronger than you. It just means that their character is scaled up so that they're able to still complete content in the world. But the good thing about the system is that me being somebody who's CP 740 is going to be able to play with somebody who's level 10. And they're still going to be able to contribute towards the group. Obviously, I'm going to deal way more damage than them, but they're still going to be able to contribute in some way due to the scaling of the game. I also realized I did not cover the maximum level. At the time of the release of this video, the maximum champion point level is champion point 750. And for the most part, every time ZOS releases a patch for the Elder Scrolls Online, they will increase the champion point cap by another 30 points, 10 for each section. And some of you might say, well, I mean, Dottz, isn't that getting a little bit of ridiculously high? It's the same amount of experience for the most part each time. They basically change the experience curve for the champion point leveling each time so that it's roughly the same amount of experience that you need to gain from, you know, let's say way back when, let's say the cap was 620, it's going to be the same amount of experience from, 10 to 620 as it is from now from 10 to 750. So just, as it gets higher, it's still, it's not gonna get crazy ridiculous. But do keep in mind, if you gain CP past 750, you can gain CP past 750, but that CP will not be placeable. The maximum usable CP is 750. The maximum CP in the entire game is like 3,600 or something ridiculously high and stupidly out there. But you'll be able to use, at the time of releasing this video, use up to 750 champion points at one time. The next section that I'm going to cover is vampire versus werewolf versus just being immortal, and which situations you're going to want to use what and why you would choose that. So in order to become a vampire or a werewolf, there's 3 different ways that you can do it. You could either purchase it off the crown store. You could either purchase the disease and get the quest to start the skill line. You can also get bitten by certain NPCs around the world. If there are certain locations and specific NPCs that need to hit you to infect you with the disease for those 2 things. So if you could also get attacked by one of those NPCs. But the easiest way to do it is to have a player infect you with one of those diseases. Now, new players, do not let people trap you into buying a werewolf or a vampire bite. If you join any guild, I can almost guarantee there will be a player in that guild that's willing to give you either a vampire or a werewolf bite for free. They're able to put a skill point into a passive that allows them to transfer their disease to another player. Now, once you are bitten by an NPC, or you buy the skill line and get the quest, or you are bitten by a player, you need to be at a specific location. So just showing what it looks like on the map, you can see this is a vampire altar. If someone wanted to give you vampirism, they would need to take you to a vampire altar, bite you here. You would then get the skill line and be able to do the quest in order to get access to the skill line. For the werewolf, there's also werewolf sanctuaries that you could go to. The player would bite you there, and then you would again be able to start the quest in order to obtain the skill line. Now, I'm not going to go over the specific skills in the skill lines, as there are there's a lot of different skills in the skill lines for the most part, and I don't want to go over all the specific ones here because it will take a lot of time. But I'll just cover on both skill lines and their benefits and drawbacks generally. So vampirism has some different drawbacks. Over time, every 6 hours, you're going to stage up as a vampire. There's 4 different stages, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And every 6 hours, you will stage up. And every time you feed on somebody or drink a drink called Double Bloody Mara, you will rank down. For the most part, you could pretty much rank up to Vampirism Stage 4 safely. But as you do rank up, you will have some additional benefits and some additional drawbacks. So at max rank, you take 25% additional damage from flame, your vampire abilities cost 21% less, and you have 75% less health recovery. But vampire is still very good for 3 specific reasons. It has an ability called Mist Form that I'll show on the screen now that allows you to take a lot less damage and be able to zoom around really fast through Major Expedition. Baleful Mist really isn't all that great. You also get access to the Supernatural Recovery passive, which increases your magic and stamina recovery by 10%, also very good. And then you also have Undeath, which reduces the damage dealt when you fall below 50% health by up to 33%. Very good for staying tanky while you're below 50% health. In terms of being a werewolf, though, you have the werewolf transformation, which allows you to turn into a werewolf. That is obviously what you're going to need. You're going to need that ultimate slotted in order to actually gain use out of werewolf. And to rank up werewolf, you need to be killing people and killing things while in werewolf form, and your werewolf skill line will rank up as a result. Vampire skill line just gains up levels by playing the game, but werewolf, you need to actually kill things while in werewolf form in order to rank up. Now, werewolf, unlike vampire, when you werewolf is slotted as an ultimate, and when you transform into werewolf, you gain access to all of these different skills on a specific werewolf bar, and then you gain passives that make that werewolf bar stronger. But do keep in mind, while you are in werewolf form, you do take a lot of extra damage from poison, so that is a major drawback to werewolf form. But if you are in human form, while you are a werewolf, you have no drawbacks. There's literally no penalty, because the only penalty suffered are while you're in werewolf form itself. Now, in what situation would you want to use vampire, and in what situation would you want to use werewolf? Now, as a tank, being a vampire has major benefits, specifically through that one passive I highlighted on death. It really helps you take a lot less damage while you are getting lower on health. So if you are a tank, definitely consider being a vampire. If you are a magic DPS or a healer, you could also take advantage of being a vampire, because that extra recovery is going to be very, very beneficial to you in a PvE environment. Having 10% is nothing to slouch at, especially healers really do need recovery. Having extra recovery through simply being a vampire is super helpful. Being a stamina DPS, I've seen mixed things. I've seen some people say that they like vampirism and some people say they don't. I would pretty much leave it up to you to decide. The extra 10% recovery can be great if you feel like you need it, but if you don't feel like you need it, then you don't have to be a vampire. It's really up to you. So now that may be leaving you wondering, well, Dottz, in what situations are werewolves good? Werewolves are good in PvP for specific werewolf builds. If you focus on being a werewolf in PvP, and your whole build is focused around that, then werewolf form could be worth it. Werewolf is also worth it if you're playing stamina in PvP and you just need extra recovery and don't need 2 ultimates. For example, on my stamina Nightblade, I don't need a second ultimate. I really only need 1. So my character is a werewolf, so that while that werewolf ultimate is slotted, I don't know if you read the little picture I put on the screen, it gives me 15% additional recovery by just being on my bar. So I keep werewolf transformation on my back bar just to have there for the recovery, because I don't really want to be a vampire, so I'm just a werewolf to gain some extra recovery on my back bar. Now, werewolf in PvE is really not all that great. You can make it work, but in general, being a vampire or being mortal is generally better. Now, you may be wondering, well, what about being a vampire for PvP? At the moment of making this video, I'm recording this pre-Summerset. I don't think being a vampire in PvP is going to be worth it. Fire damage is going to be really rampant, I believe, during the Summerset patch, because light attacks are going to be dealing, which is just when you simply left-click your mouse button and you do an attack. Light attacks are going to be dealing more damage, and because Inferno stabs are going to be very prevalent, you're going to be receiving a lot of fire damage from opponents and anybody that uses flame. Now, because of that, I think you're going to be too squishy if you use vampirism. If you feel like your build is tanky enough and can benefit from the vampirism skill line, then you could absolutely recommend picking it up. But just keep in mind that you will be a lot squishier to fire as a vampire during the Summerset patch. So you need to kind of weigh the pros and cons of vampirism for your PvP build to decide if it's right for you. Now, let's say that you decide, I don't want to be a vampire or a werewolf anymore. What do I need to do? Well, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that you undo all of your skill points, so that you take all the skill points that you put into either vampire or werewolf, take all those skill points out. I'll cover that in the next section, the rededication shrine section, so make sure you give that a watch. But you have to go to a priest of RK to make sure that you can undo lycanthropy or vampirism. But it's just a simple gold fee, 600 gold, and you will be able to undo your disease. You have to go to the Mages Guild in either Evermore, which can be found in Bangkorai. You can also go to Ralka in Reaper's March. That is another option. And then you could also go to Riften, which can be found in the Rift. If I could actually pull up the Rift, you can go to Riften, which can be found in the Rift, and go to the Mages Guild there, talk to the Priest of RK in order to cure your affliction. The next topic that I'm going to cover is rededication shrines. Inevitably, when you're going through your adventures, you may try some different skills while you're leveling up. You might try some different passives while you're leveling up, maybe even some different attribute splits while you're leveling up. And then you're going to realize you get to the end of the game, you're like, I kind of want to change things around, reset all my points, and try a new setup. Or maybe you're leveling and you misplace a point and you're like, oh no, there's this skill point gone forever, can I change it around? And the answer is yes. You could do that via rededication shrines, which can be found in the capital cities of your factions, as shown by this symbol on the map. It can be found in Mournhold for the Ebonheart Pact, Eldenroot for the Aldmeri Dominion, and Wayrest for the Daggerfall Covenant. Now, when you come into the rededication shrine room, you will see 3 different shrines. You only really need 2 of them for the purposes of rededication, and for the Ebonheart Pact, you have the shrine to Kide and the shrine to Stoon. So when you talk to Stoon, you're going to get the options to reset your skills or just reset your morphs. When you reset your skills, that gives you all of your skill points back, including passive points back. And when you reset your morphs, that gives you all of your just your morph points back. In addition, when you talk to the Shrine of Kine, you're able to reset your attribute points, and this just will give you all your attribute points back. Now, do keep in mind, if you ever do decide to cure vampirism or werewolf lycanthropy, I covered that in a previous section, you need to make sure to rededicate your points and get them all back before you cure yourself. Otherwise, those skill points will kind of go away once you lose your vampire or werewolf skill line. So make sure you reset your points before you undo one of those skill lines if you ever choose to do so. The next topic is going to be on dungeons. Dungeons in the Elder Scrolls Online are instanced areas that are usually intended for group play. These are intended for groups of 4, where you're going to have 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 damage dealers. Again, to go over for the roles, if you're really new to MMOs, tanks are supposed to make all of the monsters hit them. They want to soak up the damage, be really beefy and tough, and make sure to be taking on the damage for their group. Healer's job is to keep everybody alive by healing them and keeping their health bars topped off, while damage dealers, you guessed it, deal the most damage and are going to be killing all of the things in these areas as fast as possible. Now, like I said, a dungeon group is made up of 4 players, a tank, a healer, and 2 damage dealers. Now, while you are below level 50, you're only going to have access to normal dungeons, and you will see them if you go to the specific dungeons. You will see what normal dungeons that you have access to, and they get unlocked in terms of difficulty as you level up. Now, I would recommend, while you are playing throughout your adventures, to make sure that you queue for a random normal dungeon once per day. If you hit join queue, it will put you in a queue that will group you up with 3 other players. Make sure you set your role to only the roles that apply to you. So it's more often than not going to really just be 1 role. So make sure you select the role that applies to you, but then it'll group you up with 4 other players or 3 other players to make sure that you have that group composition I talked about. You guys will be teleported to the instance, and then you will be able to go and quest through your dungeon. Do remember though that all of these dungeons have a quest at the beginning of them, and these quests give skill points. So I definitely recommend making sure that you pick those up. Also, when you do your first random normal dungeon for the day, you get a batch of extra supplies, and then you also get a massive boost of experience once you beat the dungeon. So it's definitely worth doing these once per day, because this rewards reset once a day. You also can just walk to the dungeons yourselves if you want to, but the dungeon queue finder, which can be found underneath the group pane, makes it a lot easier. Now, once you are above level 50 and are veteran ranked, you will have access to random veteran dungeons that you can queue for. I personally recommend that you do not queue for a random veteran dungeon until you are champion point 160 or above, because that is gear cap, and I went over scaling in this game. Gear scales to your level. It's going to be much more beneficial to do these when you are CP 160, so that you're actually getting max level gear than when you're lower. Also, Some of the random veteran dungeons are extremely challenging, and not being gear capped is going to really hurt your group's chance of being able to complete the content, simply because you won't have the power to do it yet. But similarly to normal dungeons, there's also a random veteran dungeon queue for the day that you can join the queue for and get grouped up with other players. The next topic that I'm going to cover is trials. Trials are ESO's version of the raid. It is basically like a dungeon, but on steroids, where all of the monsters are a lot tougher, but generally the loot is a bit better, mostly from a PvE aspect. Generally, you won't need to do trials for player versus player gear. The gear mostly benefits people doing PvE, but the gear from trials is very, very good and is definitely something to consider using. It's not mandatory to make your build the best, but a lot of builds will benefit greatly from trials gear that they find within the instance. Now, trials are made up of 12 players. Now, that usually will entail 2 healers, 2 tanks, and 8 DPS. Some trials don't require 2 tanks, and generally you could stick another damage dealer in that slot, but for the most part, you will find that trials are made up of 2 tanks, 8 DPS, and 2 healers. In order to go into a trial, you need to actually walk to the trial entrance, which you can find on your map, and then once one person from your group enters the trial, everybody can just go into the group pane, right-click him, and teleport. Now, you can generally go to Craglorn if you want to try to find groups in order to do a lot of the Craglorn trials, which tend to be a little bit easier. You could just go to that zone and say in zone chat, you know, looking for a trials group. But what I definitely recommend doing is joining, if you're really interested in trials, you could either join a social guild, similarly to my guild, Dippin' Dots, that does do trials every week. Or if you want to like really push things to the absolute max once you're eventually there, you could join a dedicated trials guild that focuses on trials progression week after week on the hardest content in the game. So that is definitely something you could join to get more involved with trials. But that is what trials are. Definitely recommend checking them out if you're interested in PvE content. The next thing that I'm going to cover is synergies. Synergies are generally an overlooked thing for new players because they'll see something pop up and they're going to be like, I don't know what this is, but they're very, very important when you are in a group. Basically, what a synergy is that if somebody in your group uses an ability that has a synergy attached to it, that basically allows you as their teammate to activate that synergy similarly to how you'd activate an ability and gain bonuses from activating that synergy, deal more damage, heal yourself, etc. So I think this will be better shown with an example. So if we look at I'm a Dragon Knight, so I have the Standard of Might morph on my Ardent Flame Ultimate. And as we can see, we're going to just focus on that last paragraph. An ally near the standard can activate the Shackle Synergy, which will deal about 10k flame damage to enemies in the area and immobilize them for 5 seconds. So what's going to happen is that when I drop my Standard of Might, if you are in the area, you're going to see on the bottom of your screen, activate, you know, then whatever the synergy name is with the keybind next to it. For me, the default keybind is X. And by simply pressing X, you are going to deal 9.5k flame damage to enemies in the area and shackle them down for 5 seconds. So synergies are extremely important when it comes to group damage and group composition and should not be ignored, and you should activate them when they pop up. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the justice system and selling stolen goods. So this was not originally part of the game when it was first released, but was later added in. And the justice system is the system that surrounds your ability to either murder NPC players in game or surrounding your ability to steal and take things that don't belong to or that you didn't purchase. So just like Skyrim and Oblivion, you're able to kill NPCs and attack NPCs on site if you would like to, and you're also able to steal goods from them. Obviously, though, if you are caught, the guards are not going to be too happy about it, and you will get a bounty on you. Now, when you do have that bounty placed on you, depending on what you did, it's either going to be a kill on sight bounty, or they're just going to accost you when they eventually find you. Now, if you get accosted by a guard, they're going to stop you, say, hold up, criminal scum, you violated the law, and they're going to ask you for a certain amount of gold. And you can either pay the gold and clear your good name, or you can choose to flee and run, and then they're going to attack you. If you have an attack on sight bounty, you're going to just be attacked on sight. Now, don't think that if the guards kill you, that means that, okay, my debt is paid to society, I died. When you do die with a bounty on you, that bounty, if possible, is taken automatically from your gold supply. So do keep that in mind. Also, if you do pay the bounty to the guards, just like the other Elder Scrolls games, you do lose all your stolen goods. But let's say that you want to keep all of those items, or you don't want to lose your goal, or you don't want to get killed, and you want to keep all the items that you stole, either from the dead bodies or from actually thieving. You can come to the Outlaws Refuge, which can be seen by this symbol on the map. And when you go to the Outlaws Refuge, you're going to be able to talk with various fences that are willing to either buy or launder your stolen goods and can pay off bounties for you. So if you pay off the bounty at the fence, you won't have to pay it to a guard, and you'll be able to keep all of the items that you took. The Outlaws Refuge is also a safe place. If you're under attack from guards, you can come here, and you obviously won't be attacked. And there's, sometimes in these Outlaws Refuges, there's guild traders, there's banks, general merchants, and then there's also the fences that I discussed. So if we come over to the fence here, we can see, talk to them, store fence, and like I said, I can either sell my stolen goods to the fence, because you cannot sell stolen goods to random merchants throughout the world, similarly to Skyrim, or if you want to keep those items for yourself, but actually, let's say you do talk to a guard, they won't take them from you, you can launder those items, and for a fee, you're able to keep those items for yourself. The next section of this guide is going to cover housing. Now, housing in the Elder Scrolls Online is mainly a cosmetic thing or a convenience thing. It is not required to be end-game content. I know in other games like World of Warcraft, they had the garrison system, and the garrison system you could basically build into a fully functioning city that would require you to never leave it, and you could never do that. But you can't do that in ESO. ESO housing, the way I equate it, is kind of more similar to RuneScape housing, where, yes, you can build a lot of conveniences within the house, but it's never going to be so convenient that you never have to leave. Normally it's like an end game gold dump, but you can customize it to be really, really cool. There's a lot of housing options, and you can add a lot of conveniences within the house. Now, as you can see, when you come to this menu, there are various houses that show the ones that you've collected and the ones that you have not collected. Now, every person gets a free apartment. There's a quest, usually in the banks of the main cities, that there's going to be a housing guide that offers you a quest to do. You'll do the quest, and you are going to get a really tiny apartment that you have access to. That's the only thing you get for free. Otherwise, you have to either buy houses for gold, or you have to buy them for crowns, which is obviously the in-game currency that costs real money. And you could buy these places furnished or unfurnished. Furnished is obviously going to cost much more than the unfurnished versions, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do. Once you then purchase your house, you are able to travel to the house, and you will be teleported to your in-game player house. I will show you guys my house to kind of show you guys a bit of an example, but I do want to cover guild halls in this section as well. Basically, when you have multiple houses, or even just one house, you could set that house as your primary residence and allow people to come and visit you. As you can see at the bottom right, we have the housing editor. So if I press F5, I'm able to browse all of the things that I'm able to place. I can purchase things from the crown store. I can retrieve items from around my house, or I can access my social options, which is basically my visitors, my ban list, what guilds are allowed to visit and what guilds are not allowed to visit. So like I said, you can basically set this up to be your primary residence, and then if you go to your guild, generally your guild will tell you which house is your dedicated guild house. So for my guild, it's obviously me. So if people right-click my name and go visit primary residence, because I have my guild set to be able to access this house, they're able to come here and access it. They're not able to move things around and change things around because I did not give them permissions to, but they're able to visit the house. Now I'll kind of just show you guys. My house is the erstwhile sanctuary, which can be found in the Gold Coast. It is a old Dark Brotherhood sanctuary. And as you can see, I kind of have this room just like dedicated to be like a little, my little Dark Brotherhood room. I got my altar with my book and the skull next to it. I got some banners hanging from the ceiling and a nice chandelier. Then you come down, and I have braziers leading you down to the main pathway. I have a shrine to Sithis chilling up underneath the waterfall. For some more ambiance, the very Dark Brotherhood theme. You can see banners hanging from the ceiling. I basically bought this furnished, but then added some stuff and moved some stuff around. And one of the big complaints also when housing was first introduced was that you couldn't store things in your house similarly to Skyrim. But they did add that in. They added in storage coffers. So you're able to it's a separate storage container. Not like your bank. Your bank is accessible from all characters, but the storage container is only accessible if you go to that storage container itself. So you place a storage container in your house, you go up to it, and you're able to access the items within the container. You could also, I placed my my vendor, this is my vendor, my merchant vendor, and then I also was able to place a banker in my house so that myself and my guildies have access to their individual banks from inside the house. Then if I come into this room, I have this set up as like a trophy room. So whenever you beat dungeons, in the game, you get access to these undaunted busts, which are basically big gold or brass busts. I'm not sure what the metal is, that are of the main boss in the dungeon. So you can see I have those scattered around this room to show my triumphs and accomplishments. Then we run down this way. And if you watch my streams, you will know that in many of my streams, I do this thing called Fireside Chat, which is basically an opportunity for people to just have a chat with me. We just basically just a long Q&A session at the end of the stream. And I have that here. I have my throne set up to a bunch of chairs surrounding the fire, overlooking the waterfall. And what a nice view. And then besides that, I also have access to... And I do want to add more to this at some point, but for the most part, this is just what I have right now. I already showed you I have the vendor set up. I have a transmutation station here. I'm going to go over that in a later part of the guide, but I do have that here. I have a crafting station for alchemy, cooking, enchanting. This will also be gone over later. And then also woodworking, clothing, and blacksmithing. You can get more stuff. You can get mundus stones for your house. You can get better more crafting stations for your house that are attuned to certain set bonuses. I will also go over that later in the video. And then you also have a target skeleton here so that you can practice your DPS rotation. I have a different target skeleton, or a target centurion in this case, that simulates a boss. And then I have an outfit station here in my guild house. So that's just an example of some stuff you could do with a guild house and how you can customize it to not only be convenient, but to look how you want it to look for yourself and for your guild members. The next thing that I'm going to cover is combat basics. Just the very basics behind combat in ESO. The next section is going to cover animation canceling, which is a bit of a more advanced combat feature, but this specific section will go over just the very, very basics. Now, the first thing you're going to notice that when you left click, you do these just little attacks, these one-off attacks. These are called light attacks. Light attacks are very important because not only do they deal damage, they also proc any weapon enchants that you have on your gear. You can enchant your weapons to do certain things, like this one, for example, deals magic damage and restores magic into my character. So by simply left-clicking, I not only have a chance to deal proc that enchant, but I actually deal my weapon's damage to my target. And like I said, light attacks also do generate ultimate. So this is very, very important to make sure that your ultimate is capped out at all times and that you're able to use it when you need to. Besides light attacks, we also have what's called a medium attack, which is when you hold it down for a little bit, you hold your left click down for a little bit, and then let your attack go. It does a little bit more damage than a light attack, but it does not restore resources, which is what a heavy attack does. If you hold down your left click until it lets itself go, that does a heavy attack, which does more damage, and it also restores your resources. Heavy attacks from staves restore magicka. Heavy attacks from melee weapons and bows restore stamina. So these are very important if you need resources in a pinch. Simply holding left click and popping off a heavy attack will allow you to regain some resources. Besides light and heavy attacks, we also have blocking, which is done by holding right click for PC. Blocking is a very important mechanic that I know as a new player I struggled with tremendously, and that through my experiences many new players struggle with tremendously, because it's very easy to fall into the trap of not doing this. You know, you don't know when to do it, when's the best time to block, when should you be blocking, or when should you be on the offensive. Basically, the best time to block is if you feel like, if you see an enemy monster charging up a heavy attack, it'll be shown by kind of like lines will be coming out from the middle of their body. You'll be able to kind of see it flaring out from them. Holding block will basically cause that enemy's heavy attack to not work, and it will set them off balance. If you also see them channeling something like that, you could also do what's called a bash, and by holding your, this is the default way, by holding your block key and then left clicking, you could bash, and bash will interrupt a spell cast and basically interrupt the enemy, set them off balance, etc. So that is what a bash is. But blocking is very important if you need to mitigate damage, like if you see a boss is about to use a big mechanic that you can't avoid, holding block is a way to do it. Now, blocking does cost stamina, and as you can see, I don't know if you guys noticed this, my stamina is not passively regenerating because I'm holding block. If I let go of block, my stamina will regenerate, but if I go and hold block, it will not regenerate, and this is to help prevent people from just being able to block for an eternity. Now, let's say you don't want to block and you want to, you know, you need to, blocking isn't the best option right now. You need to be able to get away from your opponent. You can do what's called a dodge roll. Now, the default way to do a dodge roll is to double click an arrow key, like a directional key, twice. I highly recommend unbinding that and setting your dodge roll to be a singular button press. It's going to be much, much easier for when you're in combat. So me, I have mine bound to V. So if I want to dodge roll, I can just hold backwards and press V, and I will dodge roll away from my target. This not only moves me away from my current location, but it allows me to dodge the enemy's skill, and the skill will miss, and I will receive no damage. Blocking, when you do block, you will still receive some damage, so do keep that in mind. But if you dodge roll and you successfully dodge roll the ability, you will receive 0 damage from that skill or attack or whatever your enemy is using. In addition, you also have your ability bars. As you can see, I have my 2 bars of abilities, and I can just, you know, press that number key and use my abilities as I want to. Now, a lot of new players I see fall into one of 2 bad habits. They either just light attack all the time and don't do anything else, or they just use abilities. They just use abilities, completely ignore light attacks, and just forget about them entirely. You need to utilize both to have a complete damage damage profile. to do the most amount of damage and maximize your damage, you need to utilize both light attacks and skills. So what I would recommend getting into the practice of right away is using your light attack, then a skill. Using a light attack, then a skill, etc., etc. It allows you to benefit from both light attacks and skills, and allows you to not only be generating ultimate, but light attacks are just free damage, you know? The free damage, they generate ultimate, they're too good to not use, and then obviously abilities are your bread and butter of your build, so you need to make sure that you're always using abilities. But that's going to segue me into the next section called animation canceling. So I'm going to show you guys how to weave those light attacks in with your abilities super, super fast, that it actually cuts some of the time and increases your damage. So stick around for that next section. Alrighty, so this section is going to be on animation canceling. The first disclaimer that I need to put on this section is this is not cheating, and this is not a bug. For some reason, new players and some players have a belief that animation canceling is a bug or it's an exploit of some sorts, but they couldn't be any more wrong. Animation canceling was not intended back when ZOS made the game, but players figured it out and were utilizing it, and ZeniMax was like, you know what, it makes combat a bit faster and increases the skill cap, so we're going to leave it in the game, and animation canceling is now part of ESO and has been since the beginning. And by choosing to use it, you are going to be increasing your DPS, and I highly recommend practicing it throughout your adventures. And there's only one type of animation canceling that I believe everybody should 1000% know. And I'm going to cover all the other ones, but this one is the main one. And this is called light attack animation canceling. Now, in the last section, if you watched it, I explained why weaving light attacks in between your skill usages is very important for not only maximizing damage, but for maximizing the amount of ultimate gained from light attacks. Now, if you notice, this is a bit slow. Light attack, skill, light attack, skill. Takes some time, right? You can make that go faster by doing something like this. Look how much quicker that is. Look how much quicker I'm getting off the same damage as if I did this. See how much quicker that goes off? That is because I'm animation canceling the light attack animation with my skill. So I'm going to tell you guys things as I do them. So it's just light attack skill, light attack skill, light attack skill, left click 1, left click 1, left click 1. And you can see my light attack damage and my skill going off at the exact same time. Now, light attack animation canceling with the skill is not the only way to do animation canceling. I'm going to cover the other ones really quick, but this is the one that is the most important, and I 1,000,000% recommend that you get in the habit of doing this while you're adventuring. I know it's going to be kind of weird when you first start, but the more you practice it and the more you use it, the more second nature it will become. Just to cover some other methods of animation canceling really quick, you have swap canceling. So basically you can use an ability and then swap your weapon in order to cancel that animation. So this is what the full animation of my volatile armor looks like. But if I want to cancel that animation, I just press 4 and then weapon swap as I completely mess it up. 4 and then weapon swap. And as you can see, my volatile armor did not go through the full animation. It did go off, but it didn't go through the full animation. And then I ended up on my back bar, as you can see. I also just animation canceled my wall of elements. I could also do it with my engulfing flames. So as you can see, engulfing flames, and I weapon swapped, so now I'm on my back bar. It's just animation canceling allows you to do things faster. You also have dodge canceling, so you can use a skill followed up by a dodge. So as you can see, that's me dodging my volatile armor again. You also have block canceling, so you can use a skill and then follow it up with a block. A lot of skills, though, in the game can be cast while blocking, so that is something to keep in mind. But some skills cannot, but you can cancel their animation with a block. Now, you could also string all of this stuff together if you want by, let's say, doing light attack, skill, and then a dodge roll. So, for example, I could do light attack, skill, dodge roll. And as you can see, I canceled all those animations. And you see how much faster that is than if I did light attack, skill, dodge roll. I can string all of them together really, really quick. Actually, I'm out of stamina. That's why I can't dodge. So here, let me let my stamina regen really quick. So you can see it allows you to complete 3 actions so much quicker than if I just did them individually. So I covered light attack canceling, I covered swap canceling, dodge canceling, and block canceling. You also can do that with heavy attacks. You can kind of like cancel out the last part of the animation with the skill, but light attack canceling is much more fluid. Heavy attack canceling, you really only need on like certain builds, but you can cancel out the last bit of a heavy attack with a skill, so that is definitely something to keep in mind. You can't medium cancel, that's not possible. So swapping is bash canceling. This is especially useful for if you use a sword and shield because your bash will be dealing more damage. You can cancel skills with a bash. So if I use my volatile armor and then bash, it's hard to tell, but the bash does go off. Keep an eye on the target skeleton. You can see that 429 damage or that 644 damage getting sneaked in. It's hard to tell because of the way that I have my my thing bound, but you can see it going off. You can see it going off. So bash canceling is extremely important for builds that use sword and board. It's a way to squeeze in some extra damage while you're bursting. I wouldn't recommend doing it all the time because it can get costly on your stamina, but it is a way to squeeze in some extra damage. And you can combine that again with the light attack canceling that I went over and do light attack, skill, and then bash. So as you can tell above the target dummy's head, all of that damage did go off, as opposed to if I did light attack, skill, bash. I could do light attack, skill, bash, and it goes off significantly quicker. So like I said, focus on light attack animation canceling first, especially as a new player, but then as you get better at ESO and as you learn, I would definitely recommend incorporating some of these other methods into your playing. This next section is going to be on soul gems. Soul gems are very, very important to have and collect, and I definitely recommend when you're getting these throughout your adventures, do not sell them. Keep them and hold on to them. The reason for that is that soul gems are used to not only recharge your weapon enchants, but soul gems are used to revive yourself at a specific location if you die, or revive a player. If, for example, you do not have any soul gems on you and you die, you're going to have to revive either at a wayshrine or at the beginning of an instance if you're in a dungeon. But soul gems are key to be able to, like I said, do those three things. Now, a lot of people might be tempted to go and purchase soul gems off of a guild trader, and I have to advise really heavily against that. The reasoning is that just by running dungeons, you will collect so many soul gems. When you kill dungeon bosses and get undaunted rewards, you get soul gems. You get so many. I literally have been playing this game for like about a year, a little over a year now, probably like more towards a year and a half. I have never once purchased soul gems. I have always gotten enough from doing my adventures and playing around that I never once needed to purchase them. So don't fall into this trap that you're like, I need to get soul gems in order to go. Just make sure that when you're running those dungeons, you get those soul gems to get yourself started. Or maybe if you join a guild, someone can help you out by giving you a couple to start off with before you could start your own collection from running those dungeons. But I just want to let you guys know that these are what they're used for. Do not get rid of them. Do not sell them. Hold on to them. Keep them in your bags. And this way, you'll always be able to recharge your weapons and revive if you die. The next section that I'm going to cover is crafting in the Elder Scrolls Online. Crafting in ESO is a very deep and robust system, and I actually enjoy it very, very much. Now, while crafting isn't entirely necessary for your character, it's definitely a good thing to have and to work on at all times, just because you never know if you're going to want to use it. I definitely recommend that everybody work on crafting for their characters. It's going to be much easier come endgame to be able to craft your own equipment and most of your own stuff, and it's a great way to get more materials so that you can upgrade your own stuff and you don't have to constantly pay people to do things for you. So in this section, I'm going to cover the basics of crafting, certification for the crafting, research, set bonus forges, and motifs. I did kind of cover motifs in a previous section, but I'm still going to go over it here as well. Now, there's the six crafting professions, 7 come Summerset. You have the clothing skill line, which involves using leather and cloth and silk in order to make light and medium armor. You have blacksmithing, which focuses around making metallic weapons like swords, great mauls, and axes, as well as heavy armor. And then you also have woodworking, which focuses on bows, staves, and shields. Now, those are the 3 armor professions. There is 3 crafting professions for consumables as well, and those are alchemy, which deals with making potions and poisons, which are able to be used by your character. Poisons can be used on your weapon in place of a weapon enchant, while potions are consumables that can be used in combat to give your character extra bonuses. You also have enchanting, which deals with making enchants for your gear and weapons. Like I explained previously, traits on gear and weapons give your weapons extra bonuses, but enchants are a way to take that a step further, and you're able to enchant your gear, weapons, and jewelry to make them augment your character's power even more by giving you, for example, extra magicka, extra stamina, or even extra health, or even all 3 on one piece. And these are very important to help maximize your character's power, and being able to enchant your own gear is going to help a lot. Enchantments, though, can also be purchased on guild traders just like anything else. And then finally, the last of the consumable professions is provisioning, which deals with creating buff food and drinks that you're able to use on your character. Buff food and drinks are also consumables similar to alchemical creations is like potions and poisons, but buff food is something that you could passively eat or drink on your character that will give your character stats for anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. And buff food is extremely important for your character's power, especially come endgame. You 100% of the time want to make sure to have a food or drink buff on your character. So you're going to want to not only have potions for your character to drink while in combat and continuously keep the bonuses from the potions flowing, but making sure that you get these extra stats from your buff food and drink is extremely important. Like you can see, this guy's not a really good provisioner, but I have one example here, roast corn, which increases my max stamina by 680 for 35 minutes. By not having this buff food on me, would be missing out on 680 stamina that I could have by just clicking it. When you get to the end game, this value becomes even larger when you have, let's say, Witch Mother's Potent Brew, which increases my magicka by 3,200, my health by 3,500, and my recovery by 319 for 2 hours. So making sure that you have buff food on your character at all times is important, and that is why the provisioning profession is important. I personally don't have it ranked up on this guy. I normally just buy my stuff, but this is what provisioning deals with. And then the final crafting profession added in with the Summerset DLC is jewelry crafting. And jewelry crafting deals with creating jewelry for your character, similarly to have clothing and woodworking and blacksmithing deal with creating armor for your character, armor and weapons. Jewelry deals with creating and improving jewelry, and that is only available and only accessible with the Summerset DLC. So now that we covered what the different crafting types are, let's go over some of the basics about them. I would recommend, though, I'm going to actually cover certifications first. I would recommend doing all of the certification quests for the various crafting professions. These could be found at either the Fighters Guild or the Mages Guild, and there will be 2 NPCs that have quests that will certify you in the various crafting professions. These certification quests not only teach you the basics about the crafting professions, but allow you to complete these things called writs, which are daily quests that you can complete, where you basically have to make something, turn it into a writ turn-in spot, and then you're going to get rewards for doing these writs, and you can do them once per day, and I would highly recommend doing them every single day. You can get a lot of really good rewards from doing your writs. But like I said, even though those quests do go over the basics, I'm going to cover some of the basics myself here. When you deal with the enchantment, provisioning, and alchemy professions, those normally involve creating consumables. So basically for alchemy, by eating various ingredients, you can learn what those ingredients do, or you can just combine them together as a way to make various potions or poisons combined with a certain type of water or oil, and that will allow you to make different potions. And you can look up different potion types by going into a quick Google search and Googling what the different effects are and combining them, or you can just combine them at random and see what happens, or you can just continually eat various ingredients until you learn the basics about them. Then you also have provisioning, which deals with combining various food ingredients into making either a final food or drink product, but you do need to know the recipe first in order to create that item. So purchasing and finding recipes around the world will help you make your provisioning skill even better so that you can make better food and drink buffs. You also have enchanting, which is involved in combining different runes together. You will learn about that during the certification quest, but when you combine those different runes together, you can create final enchantments. You could also deconstruct enchantments, which means breaking an enchantment down into its basic parts to break down that enchantment and turn it back into basic runes so that you can use those runes to make new enchantments. Woodworking, jewelry crafting, blacksmithing, and clothing are a little bit different than those professions, though. Now, again, you'll learn the basics during the certification quest, but I will just kind of fly through them here a bit. So you basically will get raw mats. For example, we have raw jute. If I combine 10 raw jute together, I will get jute, which can be used to create clothing. So as we can see, I can combine 10 raw jute, and it will give me the jute mat. I can then choose to create various gear pieces. I also have raw hide. I could use raw hide to make various gear pieces. And then we have the style, which goes over the motifs. Motifs are basically what your gear looks like. The reason my chest piece looks the way it does is because it is the mercenary motif, aka the mercenary appearance. And Once you learn certain motifs on your character, you know how to make things in those styles. But then you need to use style material in order to actually craft that. So if I wanted to make things in the Dark Elf style, I would use obsidian, combine that with however much rawhide I want, and I'd be able to make a level 1 rawhide belt. But you guys remember me going over traits earlier in the guide. If I want to create items with certain traits, I need to research those traits. Now, research is extremely important on your characters, and I recommend starting it as soon as possible. This guy doesn't have a lot of research done because I have a crafter that has all of his research done, but I would recommend for your first character, whenever you get gear pieces, save ones that you don't plan on using so that you can research them on your character and you're able to study the trait over a certain period of time. It will destroy the item and your character will learn the trait after a certain time period, and then you will be able to create items with that trait. So for you can see, I can create divine shoes. So if I go here and go to my light armored shoes, you would see that I can combine jute with obsidian with sapphire in order to make divine shoes. And the same principle applies to blacksmithing, woodworking, as well as jewelry crafting. You need to refine raw mats into final mats, combine those mats with styles and a certain trait stone that you have researched, because these trait stones represent the research traits, and then you can create gear. Jewelry crafting is a little bit different, though. There is no style material, but otherwise, pretty much the same stuff holds true. You also have improvement. You can improve your gear pieces. As you can see, this would be create white tier homespun shoes, but I can improve them to become fine quality, superior quality, epic quality, or legendary quality. Now, you have to combine a certain amount, though, in order to make sure that your item will be improved. For example, once I have enough traits into my crafting skill line, I can only use 2 of these hemmings in order to improve my item from normal to fine quality. Otherwise, without that trait, I would need to use 4, so I would have double the cost. If I chose to only use 1, I wouldn't have a 100% chance to improve the item, so what would end up happening is that the item would have a chance to be destroyed. So you always want to make sure you have enough in order to improve the item. Now, when you want to level these professions, because inevitably everybody's going to ask, what is the best way to level professions? The best way to level woodworking, blacksmithing, clothing, and jewelry crafting would be through the deconstruction of items. Deconstructing items into their raw parts is going to net the most experience. I'm not 100% on that jewelry crafting because jewelry crafting is still very new, so power leveling guides are still kind of unknown at this time. But for the most part, I'm assuming it's going to hold true to the same type of logic as the other crafting professions that deal with gear, where deconstruction will be your best method of gaining materials. That is the best way to level it. But do keep in mind, you cannot deconstruct items that you made for the exact same amount of experience. You can create an item and then deconstruct it and gain some experience, but deconstructing items that you either picked up from dungeons or that you got off another player is going to be the best way to gain experience. Don't think that you can just create items, deconstruct them, create items, deconstruct them. It doesn't work that way. So that is the best way to level these. Do be careful though. Do not deconstruct items that you need for research. Make sure that you save the items that you need to continually research your traits. Always have a research timer going. But if you don't need the gear piece to wear and you don't need it for research, feel free to deconstruct it into parts. And if you continuously deconstruct gear that you get through your adventures while you're leveling, you will have clothing, woodworking, blacksmithing, and jewelry crafting leveled in no time. So just be sure to always pick up things and deconstruct them. In terms of enchanting, alchemy, and provisioning, the best way to level those up is to just simply make stuff. That's it. Just simply make stuff. Combine ingredients with water or oil for your alchemy and just make things and you'll gain experience. Same thing with enchanting. Make enchantments and you'll gain experience. For provisioning, make food and you'll gain experience. So that is the best way to do it. I actually believe for enchanting is the same way as these, where deconstructing enchants will give you the most experience, but creating enchants will be helpful as well. You also can, while you are at a certain crafting table, use patterns for your house. So patterns are basically like recipes for furniture items, so to speak. So you can make housing items at the various crafting stations as well. Now, With all the, now that you guys know everything about crafting, I'm also going to cover set bonus forges. Now, I just taught you guys about how to research traits and why researching is so important. Now, as you can see, I am wearing a piece of Seducer gear. Now, it says it's part of the Armor of Seducer set. Now, the more items of the Seducer set that I wear, the more bonuses I'm going to get from wearing that armor. So, as you can see, with 2 items of Seducer worn, I am getting extra Magicka recovery. With 3, I'm getting extra Magicka. With 4, I'm getting even more Magicka recovery. And with 5, I'm reducing the cost of my Magicka abilities by 8%. In order to craft Seducer armor, though, I need to have researched a certain number of traits on the specific gear slot for the specific weight. So this is a light armored chest piece, which means that I have to have researched 3 traits on light armored chests in order to make a Seducer robe. Once I have those researched, I have to go to the specific forge or the specific place that has the Seducer set and use those crafting tables. So as you can see, for Seducer, it is actually the Fisherman's Island location. And as you can see in the map, it will allow me to craft the armor of the Seducer set. So if I go to the crafting tables at that specific place, I will be able to create Seducer's gear. And it even says on the map, it requires you to know 3 traits in order to craft that gear. So making sure you always research your items is very important to make sure that you're able to craft set gear that you want for your character. And do not forget, guys, when you are playing throughout ESO, knowing sets and set bonuses and having set gear on is going to be very important for your character's power. Do not just wear random pieces of gear. Combining different sets and set bonuses is going to be very, very important to maximizing your character's power. Now, I know that I did say for the most part the crafting professions are pretty optional. There is one crafting profession that I would recommend that every single character level up, no matter what you plan on doing, and that is alchemy. And the reason I recommend that is for the medicinal use passive. When using potions, the resulting effect lasts 30% longer. This allows you to maintain basically 100% uptime on your potion buffs and is an extremely important passive to get. So the way that I'd recommend power leveling alchemy is get a crap ton of waters or slimes or oils from questing, getting a whole bunch of materials, and then looking up online crafting alchemy potion recipes that you could basically combine, like what 2 ingredients can I be combined with a varying water type, and then just craft. And you can craft a crap ton of potions and it'll allow your alchemy to level up. Every time your alchemy goes up 10 points, I would then put a point into solvent proficiency, which will allow you to use a higher ranked water and allow you to, or oil, and allow you to gain more experience. It's a very simple way, very no BS way to level up alchemy. When you're done, you could always undo your skill points to get these solvent proficiency points back and put them in other places, but that is the simple way to level up alchemy. Really doesn't take a lot of time once you have access to the different oils and waters and stuff and a good bit of ingredients. So definitely pick stuff up through your adventures, but definitely would recommend getting alchemy to 50 for medicinal use for sure on every single one of your characters. The next topic that I'm going to cover is consumables and quickslots. I did touch on consumables a little bit in the crafting section because it was relevant to the situation. So if you watch that section, you may know a little bit about these already, but I did want to cover these in their own section. So your quickslot is something that you have access to next to your ability bar. As you can see to the left of that one with the arrow around it, I have a potion 47 of a Magicka potion that I'm able to use at any time. And if I want to use a different consumable or a different quick slot, I would just hold Q and I would be able to select what I wanted to use. But let me actually explain to you what these are and why you're going to want to use these. Now, you have things like buff food. For example, Witch Mother's Potent Brew increases your maximum Magicka, maximum health, and Magicka recovery for 2 hours. These food or drink buffs are extremely important for your character's power, and you always want to make sure that you have one of these running at all times. And you can quick slot these so that you're able to use them at any time. You also have access to something like potions, which restore your Magicka immediately, for example with this one, and then grants me major intellect, which increases my Magicka regeneration by 20% for 28.7 seconds. This These potions are very important because you can use these during combat. For example, I could use this one for a flush of resources. I could also use a different potion like a tri-stat potion, which will restore all of my resources immediately and give me the major buff for all 3 of those resources. So potions are extremely important to your character's power, and again, should be quick slotted so that you can, you know, change between your different potions, you know, while you're playing, or switch for buff food real quick, etc. So those are the different types of consumables that you have that you can quick slot, but you could also quick slot a ton of other things. For example, I could quick slot trebuchets to use in Cyrodiil that I could use to siege castles really quick, and having this in my quick slot would be easy because I could just switch to my trebuchet, press Q, and place it down. I could also quick slot assistants like my banker to give me access to my banker instantly, or my merchant to have access to my merchant instantly. Now, the way that you bring this up is when you go into your bags, you press your quick slot hotkey, which for me is Q, and it'll bring up all of the different things that you can quick slot. So you can just simply drag and drop them into your quick slot, and they will then be quick slotted. To minimize this menu, just press your quick slot key again, and you will be back in your main bag. The next thing that I'm going to cover is the major and minor buff system in the Elder Scrolls Online. Understanding this system and how it works is really key to just understanding ESO at a base level, and it's really key to understanding your build and why you should use certain abilities in combination with others. Basically, there's a whole bunch of different buffs in the game, and debuffs: prophecy, maim, intellect, fortitude, etc. Those are the names of various buffs. And there's a major version of those buffs and a minor version of those buffs. The minor version will give you like a small bit of the buff. So let's say if we look at something like, let's say, minor prophecy, you would gain some extra spell and damage, some extra spell and weapon crit. But if you have something like major prophecy, you get more spell critical, not weapon critical, excuse me. You'd get more spell critical. So minor prophecy would give you some spell critical, major prophecy would give you more spell critical. And that same logic applies to every buff in the game. If you have something like minor maim, that would cause your target to deal some less damage to you. But if you have major maim on your target, the target would deal a lot less damage to you. Now, the way it works is that you can only have one instance of a major or minor buff on you at the same time. So for example, you cannot have 10 different major prophecies on your character at the same time. You can only have one major prophecy and one minor prophecy. That's it. You could have one of every type of buff or debuff in its major form and in its minor form. So for example, right, we look at Inner Light. While slotted, my max magic is increased by 5%, and I also gain Major Prophecy, increasing my spell critical rating by 2191. I also have Cauterize, which while slotted gives me Major Prophecy, increasing my spell critical by 2191. If I slot Cauterize and Inner Light at the same time, I don't now suddenly gain 43 plus 100 spell critical. I'm still only gaining 2191 because I can only have one instance of Major Prophecy active on my character at once. So knowing and understanding what major and minor buffs your character has access to is going to be important for building your character. One buff I would recommend that you need to have on every single character, no matter what you play. Okay, this is going to be less relevant for tanks, but it's going to be relevant for every single damage dealer and healer in the game. You need to have either Major Brutality if you're Stamina or Major Sorcery if you are Magicka. Not having a source for one of those buffs is going to significantly wreck your damage, okay? Now, Major Sorcery increases your spell damage by 20%, while Major Brutality increases your weapon damage by 20%. So you would literally be missing out on 20% additional damage for your character by not having that buff. Healers want the spell damage as well. Make sure you have a source of these somewhere in your build. Just want to let you guys know, always make sure you have a source of these. So check out different abilities that your character has access to, either via its weapons or its class skills, and see where you can get a source of Major Sorcery and or Major Brutality from. The next thing that I'm going to cover is my favorite, PvP in ESO. PvP in ESO comes in various different forms. I have a very in-depth guide to PvP and how to improve in PvP on my channel if you want to take a look at it, but I'm just going to touch on the basics here. Once you reach level 10, you will have access to the Alliance War, which allows you to enter into Cyrodiil and fight the other factions. This is the only time that faction matters. When you play with everybody else throughout the world, you can play with anybody regardless of their faction. But when you play in Cyrodiil PvP, you can only play with members of your faction because you are fighting other factions. When you play, so there's other PvP modes like Battlegrounds. When you queue for Battlegrounds, you can queue with anybody. There's also dueling. Dueling is 1v1. But when it comes to Cyrodiil PvP, you can only play with people on your faction. Now, the way that it works is that there are these things called campaigns. Campaigns are simply different instances of Cyrodiil, and you can enter and play in different instances that you'd want to. There's the 30-day standard campaign, which has champion points enabled, so if you're a low level, I would not recommend going in here. There's 30-day no CP, which involves no champion points, simply put. There's below level 50, which is for anybody who's not level 50, and then the 7-day standard, which is just the same thing as the 30-day standard with CP enabled, but the campaign only lasts 7 days instead of 30 days. And you might be saying, Dottz Gaming, I don't know what you mean by a campaign lasting 30 days. What does that mean? Basically, over the course of, we'll go with 30 days. Over the course of 30 days, your factions are going to do various things. You're going to try to hold different keeps. You're going to try to hold and take different outposts, resources, and Elder Scrolls. And while you are spending time retaking those things, you gain points for your faction. The faction with the most points at the end of the campaign wins the campaign. When you win the campaign, you get a whole bunch of extra rewards and bonuses sent to you in the mail, and then the campaign score resets. When the campaign score resets, though, the keeps, outposts, resources, and scrolls held, though, does not change. It's not like everybody, the map resets to its default amount. Everything that was held in the previous campaign is still held, but the scores are reset. You also get various bonuses for holding different keeps and different Elder Scrolls. And then there's also this thing called Emperorship. Basically, what that means is that the player who has the most amount of points earned for that campaign duration, if you have the most amount of points for that campaign duration, and you capture the 6 keeps surrounding the Imperial City in the middle of Cyrodiil. So that is these 6 keeps surrounding Cyrodiil, the ones that look like castles, not these outposts, the ones that look like castles. If you hold those 6, the person with the most points will be crowned the Emperor, and they will gain access to the skill line that makes them very, very strong. And they will hold on to that until their faction loses control of all 6 of those keeps. Then that person will become the former Emperor. When you gain Emperor, you gain access to a costume, a title, and a die. And like I said, you also gain access to that skill, that passive line while you are the Emperor. Now, you can be a part of 2 different campaigns at the same time, your home campaign and your guest campaign. Your home campaign allows you to contribute towards the score of your faction, while your guest campaign, you can just kind of really go there and earn AP and just play with friends. So what I would recommend doing is setting your home campaign to the one that you think you're going to play in the most, while your guest campaign is the one that you think you might want to visit if your home campaign's either not going very well or you just want to play around with some friends. Besides Cyrodiil, there is also Battleground PvP, which is simply 4v4v4, and there's different modes like Team Deathmatch, Domination, Capture the Flag, Chaos Ball, and Crazy King. Once Summerset is released, this menu will be a little bit different, and you will be able to kind of choose what specific game modes you want to queue for, but pre-Summerset, you just kind of queued for a grab bag of all the different game modes. Now, you can either solo queue by yourself, or you can queue with a team. It's up to you. The team sizes are a maximum of 4, so you can queue with a maximum of 4 players. Once Summerset is released, you will also have a daily Battleground reward similarly to the daily dungeon rewards, and you only will get those rewards, though, if your team comes in first or second, so you cannot just go into the Battleground and AFK. You have to actually participate. Battlegrounds are no CP enabled PvP, so don't feel like you need to be a maximum champion point in order to participate. They are no CP is enabled. So anybody who's CP 160 will have max level gear and they can participate in Battlegrounds. There's also going to be Battlegrounds accessible for players that are lower level, so as long as you're above level 10, you could also queue for lower level BGs. And then, like I said, there's also dueling. You could just simply walk up to a player and hold F to interact with them, select dueling, and you will be able to duel that player. And in addition, besides those three, there is also the Imperial City, which can be found in the center of Cyrodiil. You can actually enter into the Imperial City in the middle by going to one of these entrances. This is the Ebonheart Pact entrance, that is the Direwolf Covenant entrance, and that is the Ultimate Dominion entrance. And when you go into the Imperial City, you can choose to fight in the Imperial City above or fight in the sewers below it. Each faction has its own home base, and you can just take and capture the different districts around the Imperial City to gain extra points and currency to buy things from the Imperial City vendors. Again, my complete PvP guide goes over that a little more in depth. Now, in terms of the basics of Cyrodiil, though, because I do know that I kind of brushed over that, there's a quest when you first enter Cyrodiil that covers all the basics and gives you a skill point. So I would recommend doing that. But if you want to learn more, again, refer to my complete PvP guide to learn more about that, as well as how to improve at PvP in-game. The next section that I'm going to cover is transmutation, which was introduced in the Clockwork City DLC, and it's actually a new crafting table that we got access to during that time. It allows us to retrait and change the traits on weapons and armor. Now, in order to perform a transmutation, you have to have 50 transmute crystals, which is essentially the material for transmuting. In addition, you also need to have the trait research that you want to change it to. For example, I have this Burning Spellweave Restoration Staff in Defending, and if I wanted to change it to be, let's say, Precise, I would need to know how to make precise restoration staves and have that trait researched. And I would also need to have 50 transmutation crystals in order to actually perform the transmutation. Now, you can get transmutation crystals in a number of ways, and they come from defeating bosses in veteran dungeons and trials, completing veteran undaunted pledges, your first daily random dungeon reward, or I think they'll also come in the random battleground rewards. You also have your PvP rewards of the worthy. You also have the PvP campaign rewards and rewards from holiday events. So there are tons of ways to get transmutation crystals, and I would recommend saving them and using them on your end game builds when you eventually need to if you need to use a different trait on a gear piece that you don't get the right drop for. Now, with a guide like this, and with a guide covering all the beginner topics, inevitably people are going to ask me in the comment section, Dottz Gaming, what is the best way to level in the Elder Scrolls Online? If you are a brand new player, I'm just going to issue a veteran player's warning to you. I highly recommend questing for your first leveling process. I truly believe that you will be shortchanging your experience in ESO if you try to hyper grind your character to the maximum level as fast as you can. ESO is not a theme park MMO. It is a more sandboxy MMO. And in my opinion, you should experience the game your first playthrough. The quests are all voice acted. They have really good stories. The DLC is worth playing for the questing content. Like, go out and experience the game. Quest, have fun, learn your character, learn how to play. There is no rush to the end of the game. There's plenty of Skyshards that you're going to need to collect, plenty of lore books that you're going to need to collect, wayshrines to discover, places to explore. Don't shortchange that brand new player first time experience by just trying to power level your character. Also, you have to think, if you're a new player, how much do you really know about ESO? How much do you really know about your character? Do you really just want to grind your character to max level and be a max level character that doesn't know anything? You'd be better off, in my opinion, playing the game, taking your time through it, learning your character, learning what your abilities do and how the game works, and getting to max level in your own time. Again, there is no rush. Now, if you're the type of person that you're saying, Dottz Gaming, screw you, I don't care about that, I want to be max level, how do I do it the best? The best ways to do it is to simply grind mobs. That is the best way to do it. There are various places throughout the world that have really high concentration of monsters. You just want to go to those places and kill monsters over and over and over again. And the best way to do it is in non-instanced areas, as those are the monsters that offer the most experience when you kill them. Another way to do it, if you're really low level and you're not strong enough to pull big packs of monsters, is going to the Alakir Desert and doing the dolmens. Dolmens are basically big things where Molag Bal drops these chains down into the world, and a bunch of Daedra come down and try to, you know, wreak havoc. So basically what you do is you travel to this dolmen, you kill all the stuff at the dolmen. Once the dolmen is over and you beat it, you get a surge of experience and you can move on to the next dolmen. The dolmens in Alakir Desert all have a way shrine very, very close to them, and you're able to do them in a clockwise or counterclockwise motion depending on the day. So I'd recommend either, like I said, just hard grinding experience by killing monsters throughout the world, or you can do one of these dolmen rotations. But again, I strongly, strongly urge you against grinding your first character. I've never met a veteran character that says it's a horrible idea to quest your first time around and to take the game slow. I have not met one. So take it from me. Enjoy ESO, take your time with it, and you'll be endgame in no time. Another question that a lot of new players are going to have when they first start is, what is the best way to make gold? I'm going to go over a couple of really easy ways to make gold while you're adventuring. You don't need to go crazy when you first start out making all this crazy gold. You don't really need to worry about it until you get to the end of the game. But you can make plenty of gold while leveling and doing quests. And I'm going to tell you guys some other ways to do stuff while you level, and then some other ways if you want to do set some time apart to make some gold. I'll tell you some other ways that you could do it. First way is questing. While you're questing, you're going to get tons of rewards from doing your quests. And the quest rewards scale up, not only in the gold amount, but in the rewards that you get from them. So simply questing will be a way to make some gold. You could also deconstruct weapons and armor and sell the raw materials for extra cash on a guild trader. Or when you stumble upon nodes throughout the world, crafting nodes throughout the world, such as ancestor silk things or iron ore, etc., you can collect those raw materials and sell them on guild traders. You also can receive items called ornate items that sell for 285% more to NPC vendors. So what I would do is not deconstruct those items, but instead sell those to NPC vendors for an inflated amount. You also get extra gold for doing your random daily dungeon and your random daily battleground. You'll get a chance to get some special rewards upon beating those instances, and if you don't need those rewards, you can sell them for a profit. You could also do some thieving. You could steal some stuff that you find in various places around the world and then sell them at the Outlaws Refuge for gold. You could also complete writs every day to get a chance to get materials that you could sell or keep, or you can make gold. You can craft low-level gear with traits that are desirable for people such as divines, impenetrable, training, etc. You could also just need to pick up stuff while you adventure, such as looting mobs and crafting node spawns throughout the world. If you want to get a little bit spicier once you get to near the end of the game, I would recommend, again, I always recommend, it's the best way to make gold is true trading. So I would recommend installing 2 add-ons, Master Merchant and Awesome Guild Store, and you could basically go from guild trader to guild trader, buy items that are not being sold for their true value, and resell them on your guild trader for a higher amount. I have an entire guide dedicated to this gold making method on my channel, and I'd highly recommend, if you do eventually want to try this, I would recommend checking it out. This section is going to cover the best builds for leveling and the best builds to use at the end of the game. Dottz, how should I build my character? What should I do? While leveling, I personally believe I have the best leveling guides out there. If you go to my website, dottsgaming.com, go to hover over the PvE builds and click the leveling build section, you will see leveling builds for every single class and every single role in this game. No matter how you want to play your character and what character you want to play, I have a leveling path for you to follow. Now, I'm going to explain this because I always get questions on the leveling builds because unfortunately people rush through them and do not listen or read. So I'm going to explain them here while I have your attention. The leveling builds are basically a guided framework for while you level. So many people want to be told what to use specifically, what should I use, but don't want to actually experiment and figure out what's best for them. Why do they like certain abilities over others? So basically what I did was I went to every single class and every single role, and I found all of the viable abilities all of the viable skills that you could use or skills that you would need to level up other skills, and I compiled a list of skills for you to use for that specific class and that specific role. I understand that there are more skills listed there that can be used. The whole point of that was to give you guys a list to choose from. You're leveling. You don't know a lot about the game. You need to be able to have some freedom to experiment and figure out what do you like, how do certain abilities interact with each other. If you just did, all right, I'm just going to do whatever Dottz Gaming tells me, you're not going to understand why you're using those abilities. You're not going to understand why certain skills are more beneficial than others. So I tried to compile a list of all of the good abilities that you could basically pull and choose from to make a build for your own character and use ability combinations in an order and placement that you personally enjoy. That is why the skills are set up that way. Myself and many other veteran players believe that strict leveling builds are a complete waste of time. So my goal was to make non-strict leveling builds that you could follow as kind of like a guided framework for your leveling process. In addition, I do list on that guide if it's the best to be a vampirism, how should I split my attributes? What should I do in terms of mundus stones? I have it all listed there on that guide, so go check it out. I do not have champion points listed there because, again, champion points are not going to come until after you're done leveling. Once you do reach CP10 and you want to go Dottz Gaming, how do I place my champion points? I have an entire guide on my channel dedicated to every single champion point star in this game and why some are good and why they're bad. So definitely check that guide out once you reach CP level and check out what I have listed there. But I just wanted to make this disclaimer about the leveling builds. In addition, DottsGaming.com also features endgame builds for every single class and every single role in PvE, and all of the most common ones for PvP. So definitely check those out. At the time of releasing this video, though, the Dottz Gaming website is undergoing some serious construction. As you guys can imagine, with Summerset being released, there's a lot of work me and my web team need to do to get all of the builds up to date, so do give us some time. At the top of every single guide, it says what patch the build is intended for and who the build writer is. A little bit more than half the builds are written by me, but I do have help from other various members of my community that have stepped up to help me a lot with keeping up on my website. But pay attention to the patch that the build is written for. That build will have what patch it was designed for. Even if the date says it was made earlier, that's the date the article was published. The patch actually has what patch that the build is for. So once you do reach endgame on an endgame build, you can go to the PvP or PvE build section of my website, pick out a build, and start outfitting your character for that build. And then if you have any questions, you can join our Discord server. Link is in the description below, and ask any questions that you have in PvP or PvE theory crafting, and me and my mentors will be glad to help you out. The next topic that I'm going to cover is weekly vendors. So the way that their weekly vendors work is that there's two of them in the Elder Scrolls Online. There's the golden vendor and the furnishing vendor that only appear on the weekends. They're Friday through Sunday. And basically, these vendors have special items that only appear once a week. And they cost either gold or they cost alliance points. If you go to the person in the PvP zone, alliance points is the currency for PvP, and when you kill people in PvP, you earn alliance points, so you can spend those alliance points at the golden vendor. The golden vendor has various items, various jewelry items from sets throughout the game. It also has various monster shoulders and monster helms that I will cover in the Undaunted Pledges section, but it also has those. And again, those are sold by the golden vendor in Cyrodiil. That can be found in your faction's base camp when you teleport into Cyrodiil. If you're really into housing and if you're into furnishing, you could also visit the weekly furnisher vendor that can be found in the Hollow City in Cold Harbor. You could visit the furnishing vendor there, and he will also, again, appear in Cicero's Food and General Goods once a week, and you could go talk to him and buy some special furnishing plans that only appear once a week. And again, all the stuff that comes from the furnishing vendor and the golden rotates on a weekly basis. So if you see an item on the golden that you need, it's not going to be there next week. So be sure to check the golden every week, and the furnishing vendor, if you're interested, every week to see what items they have available. If you're a member of my Discord server, I have it set up so that there's a bot that automatically puts into the ESO News chat channel what the golden and the furnishing vendor have that week. So you can always keep an eye out for that. The next thing that I'm going to cover is Undaunted pledges. Undaunted pledges are affiliated with the Undaunted NPC Guild and is definitely something I'd recommend that everybody does, as the rewards that you get from doing these Undaunted pledges are extremely important. Now, they grant these things called monster sets, all right? Monster sets come in two parts, the helmet and the shoulders. Now, you're able to unlock and do these quests once you are level 45. You end up coming here and you're going to get a quest to do your first Undaunted pledge. You're going to do that quest, and then you're going to get access to 3 daily quests every day. 2 of these quests will allow you to, will give you rewards for beating a random veteran dungeon, and then the third one will be a random veteran DLC dungeon. Now, when you get one of these quests, it says, what is the pledge today? If I can handle more, I pledge to explore the Wayrest sewers and to return undaunted. So basically, you get that quest, you have to go to the dungeon, beat the dungeon on veteran mode, and you get what's called an undaunted key. If you beat the dungeon on veteran hard mode, which generally has a scroll near the final boss that once you activate, it makes the final boss harder, you get 2 Undaunted keys, and these Undaunted keys allow you to unlock the Undaunted chests, which have a chance to drop a monster set shoulder. Urglarg's chest has a chance to drop all the shoulders affiliated with DLC dungeons, while Glirian and Mag's chests have a chance to drop shoulders that are affiliated with the dungeons that they give quests for. If you do a Google search on the 2 of them, you will be able to see which dungeons are affiliated with them, so you should know what chest that you need to unlock. Now, for example, I'll show you the one that I'm wearing. I'm wearing the Zahn's shoulder, which gives me, it's a 2-piece bonus again. It's your head and your shoulders. The shoulders comes from these chests. Now, you get spell critical, and when you deal damage to a nearby enemy with a light or heavy attack, I have a chance to fire a beam of fire that connects with the enemy and deals a crap ton of damage over 5 seconds, and the damage is increased by 50% every time it ticks. The monster sets are really strong and really, really important to your character's overall power. No matter what role you're playing, PvE or PvP, you're going to want to be running pretty much a monster set almost every time. There are certain situations that maybe you won't want to, but for the most part, you're going to want to run these, even if it's just one of each piece, because they give 1 and 2 set bonuses. So by just wearing a monster set shoulder, I'm gaining spell critical. Now you might be wondering, okay, Dottz, if that's how I get the shoulders from these chests once I'm level 45, again, how do I get the helmets? The way that you get the helmets is that you have to do the dungeon that corresponds to that specific boss on veteran mode. So for me, I have to get the Zahn's helmet, I have to do Scale Collar Peak in order to get the helmet. That's a DLC dungeon. So to find out what dungeons correlate to what helmets you want, a quick Google search on that will do you well, or you could just ask somebody in your guild what dungeon corresponds to what monster helm. You could just do a specific Google search for the different monster sets and you'll get to see a list. Now, when you get these keys, you're gonna be tempted to unlock a chest. Do not unlock a chest until you are champion point 160. From level 45 to level CP 160, save every single key. You might be asking why. The reason you want to save every single key is because, remember, guys, max level gear is champion point 160. You want to save all of these keys so that once you're CP 160, you can unlock a shit ton of chests and you'll have all max level monster set shoulders. You can keep whichever ones that you want and that you think you'll use in the future, junk the ones that you don't, and then start working towards getting the monster helms that correlate to those shoulder pieces. But let's say you unlock a chest at level 45. Once you level 50, that monster shoulder is going to be unusable. Save the keys until you're CP 160 and unlock the chest once you're that level, and that will benefit you much more. And remember, again, doing these Undaunted pledges will help rank up your Undaunted, so getting your Undaunted to rank 9 for Undaunted Metal is going to be helped significantly from doing these pledges. And you can find the Undaunted Enclave outside of any of the capital cities. So that is Mournhold for the Ebonheart Pact, Elden Root for the Aldmeri Dominion, and Daggerfall, and Wayrest for the Daggerfall Covenant. The next thing I'm going to cover is Dragonstar Arena and Maelstrom Arena. These are 2 very, very difficult instances. One is for solo players and one is for 4-man teams. This is going to be the most difficult 4-man content in the game and the most difficult single-person content in the game. Dragonstar Arena can be found in the upper left side of Craglorn, and that is where the entrance is. When you go to DSA, it's the same type of comp as a regular dungeon, 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS, and Dragonstar Arena has various stages that you have to complete in order to beat the arena. It is very, very challenging, and you're going to need a really good coordinated group in order to beat Dragonstar Arena. If you do Dragonstar Arena on Veteran, you're going to be able to earn the Master Weapons. Master Weapons are one-piece weapons sets that you're able to get from here, and they're very, very beneficial for certain builds. So I would recommend doing a quick Google search on the Master Weapons if you do ever want to do DSA, and see what the bonuses are and see if they could ever augment your build in any way. In addition, we also have Maelstrom Arena, which is the hardest single-player content in the game. Maelstrom Arena is got through the Orsinium DLC, and again offers a normal and veteran mode. The veteran mode, when you beat it, you're able to get the Maelstrom weapons. The Maelstrom weapons are extremely important, especially in PvE DPS. Your magic and damage dealers are really going to want Maelstrom stabs, and your stamina damage dealers are really going to benefit from the Maelstrom bow. So definitely work your way up to this. Maelstrom Arena is extremely difficult, especially on veteran, and is not to be taken lightly. You're going to want to be, in my opinion, to do Maelstrom Arena at least CP 400 to 450. I've seen people do it with no CP or a much lower CP, but generally those players are much more skilled. I would recommend being at the very minimum CP 300, but I would say probably more to 400, 450 is going to be the mark that you're going to want to be before you even attempt Maelstrom Arena. Dragonstar Arena, you could do it at a little bit lower because you have a team and you can be carried by your team, but I would also recommend having at least 300 champion points under your belt so that you have the maximum stat pool. But just wanted to cover these two instances and what they are and what they offer. Like I said, the Maelstrom weapons very beneficial for PvE DPS, and the Master weapons are really good in some certain PvP builds. So you just check those out and see if there's something that interests you, and you know if it's a challenge that you want to undertake. The next thing I'm going to cover is crowd control. Crowd control in ESO, for those of you who actually have no idea what crowd control even is, crowd control is basically something that's going to prevent your opponent or yourself from doing things that they want to do. So for example, if you stun your target will not be able to move or do anything. You have them crowd controlled, you have them stunned. If you have somebody immobilized, you're going to be preventing them from moving, from walking around, and they're in both instances are going to need to do things to escape it. But these types of skills that prevent your opponent from doing things are referred to as crowd control. And ESO has various different versions of crowd control in the game. The most common ones that you're going to see are a snare, which basically slows your target's movement speed. Snares can just be reapplied at will. You have immobilize and roots, which can freeze the target in place on the spot for a certain duration, but they can still cast and perform abilities. And to escape a root, you just simply need to roll dodge, but do keep in mind that after a certain period of time, you will be able to immediately reapply immobilizations and roots. You also have silences, which are kind of like which are a soft CC in the respect that your character can still do things, but you can't really cast ability. So if you are silenced in any way, you have to press the break free key, which by default is your left and right mouse button click at the same time. I'm not sure what it is for console, and you will be able to prevent yourself from being silenced at the cost of some stamina. Then you also have really hard crowd control, which is you have a stun, which basically prevents your character from doing anything. You're completely stunned, can't move, can't cast abilities, and you have to break free. Again, that left and right click at a cost of stamina in order to break free of the stun. And after you do break free of a hard CC, you cannot be immediately re-CC'd. There's something called CC immunity that happens right after you break free, so it will prevent your character from being re-CC'd. You also have knockbacks and knockdowns and knockups, which again act similarly to stuns but move your character in a certain direction. And again, you must break free of these, costing stamina in order to have your character be able to do anything. You also have disorient, which prevents your character from doing anything, but if you take any sort of damage, it will completely be removed from you. But again, you also have to break free. Fear is also a hard CC as well, similarly to a stun, but your character loses control and flees in a random direction. Again, you also have to break free. And then I have talked about off balance. If you are off balance or your opponent are set off balance and then you are hit by a heavy attack, you will be knocked down and you have to break free of this too, which will cost stamina. So that is just an example of some of the CC that you will find in ESO and how to get out of it or break free of it. That is it, guys, for my complete beginner guide. I am really happy with the finished product of this guide. I know it got longer from last year's guide, but I've learned a lot more as an ESO player since I made this guide last year. More stuff has come out into the game, and I wanted to be sure that this guide was thorough enough so that you guys would really be able to use this as your one-stop shop for learning everything basic about ESO and be able to refer to this guide whenever you need to learn all of the basics. Do keep in mind, you didn't need to sit. If you did sit through this whole guide for the whole time, you're a hero. You're a hero, and I hope that you enjoyed the full thing. But if you're just here watching the intro, maybe you just finished the crowd control section and you're here watching this, remember, you can come back to this guide as needed. You can look and view the different sections as needed. You're not obligated to sit through the full guide and fish through information. You can come here as needed to view the information you want. I make this guide every year because when I first started playing ESO, I struggled a lot with the basics. This game is really deep. There's a lot to it, and there really wasn't a complete resource out there that I could just look at and understand the basics of this game. So my quest has been every year since that moment to make this guide, to recreate it as I learn more and as I learn and as more stuff is introduced into the game, to teach you guys, the new players coming into the game, all of the basics so that you can start off much easier and with a much better understanding than people who did not have this guide previously. So I hope that this accomplished all that, you guys understood everything, and that you enjoyed watching it. If you have any questions, please leave them below and I will be sure to answer them. Also, if you do want to join the community and be more a part of my YouTube channel, my Twitch stream, and just more a part of the community that I have grown here, you feel free to join my Discord server. The link is in the description below. I have a guild on every single platform and server except for PS4 EU, so you can also join our Discord server and ask for an invite to a specific Dippin' Dots guild on any one of the servers, and we will be sure to get you in there. Also, I do stream over on Twitch 3 days a week. You can just go to twitch.tv/DottsGaming and you will be able to see my current streaming schedule, and I highly recommend you guys stop by, say hello, ask any questions that you may have. I'm always trying to interact with the chat as much as I can, and I'm really excited with Summerset coming out, for all the new players coming in, all the new faces that we get to see and introduce into the game, and I genuinely hope you all have a great time. If this guide helped you out, I'd really appreciate if you smacked a like on it. And to see more great Elder Scrolls Online content, stream VODs here on the channel, and just other great stuff, I'd appreciate it if you hit that sub button as well as hit the bell to keep notifications on. Also, if you found this guide helpful, I would appreciate if you shared it with your friends who are also getting into Elder Scrolls Online. My goal for this iteration of this guide is to get it as widespread and as popular as possible. I do believe that we can get this guide really spread out to the masses, starting ESO here with Summerset, so that people are armed and equipped with the knowledge to really understand the game, and that they won't leave ESO because they didn't understand it, and maybe will stay for the long term and really get into the game. The game's a lot of fun. I've been playing it for a while and I really enjoy it, and definitely do as much research as you can. Give the game a fair shot, and I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. The game has a lot to offer. But that is it for this video, guys. I am so happy that if you made it to the end here, I really appreciate you listening to the outro, and thank you so much for watching my 2018 version of the Complete Beginner Guide. If you are watching this much later, this guide is still going to be relevant. A lot of these mechanics have not changed, and if there have been any changes, I will make note of it in the comment section below. So thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, I'm Dottz Gaming, and I will see you all in the next one.